Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sonic Movie Show, the only show that reviews every single video game movie in existence. My name is Ethan, and with me here to keep them bees, as always, is Devin.
Kill me. Kill me.
I didn't think for a second, like, he doesn't say that. Someone else says that.
Someone else says that in the movie, but
Yeah.
it is a good representation of, I think, our conversation.
And representing the film he chose just for this occasion, the man, the myth, the fantasy expert himself, Mr. David. How is it going?
What's it like? What is it? It's medicine.
Wow, that's remember 3 quotes.
Yeah.
That's a conversation he just had.
He was feeding him medicine, and he was like choking on it, like it was a shot.
When was this even the movie?
Jason Statham
We'll
was
talk
hurt,
about it.
and Burt Reynolds poured slop down his throat or whatever. Or maybe it was the other guy.
It was not Burt
What
Reynolds.
is this?
Burt Reynolds was the king in the movie, David.
He was like, oh yeah, but he didn't feed him the potion.
Yeah, it was the Gandalf ripoff.
The mage, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
we'll get into it. Folks, if you haven't already read the episode title, hey, some of you tell me every week, I never read the episode title before. It's weird why you call me out like this. I'm letting you know right now, this movie that we watched for y'all's entertainment is fully titled In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale, which is based off of the 2002 Windows PC Microsoft published computer RPG Dungeon Siege.
Never heard of
it. Which is fair.
Hey, I don't want to hear all this stuff about long names. I'm going to name some of your guys' movies if we're going into that.
No,
Mr. Fatal Fury, Legend of the Hungry Wolf.
Hey, I love long names. I'm just saying, that's the full name of this movie.
He loves long names.
Saying it's the full name of the movie. Yes, released in 2007, a budget of $60 million, a box office of 13. We watched this movie. David, this was your 5th pick. Before we get into it, we always talk about the video game ahead of time. Want to know around the horn if anyone has heard of Dungeon Siege. I own them.
Nope.
But David, no. Devin?
I've never heard of such a thing.
So yes, I vaguely had heard about it. Years ago, I wanted like my Steam library to have as many like classic PC games, like PC games on there, because I think that's cool to be like, that's a big history that I never really experienced. And so all 3 of these Dungeon Siege games are on there. 2002, I think 2000 and maybe 6 or 7 was the second one, and 2011 was the third one. Microsoft did publish at least the first one, if not the second one as well. Square published the third one. And Gas Powered is the name of the studio that made it. And I played today, before we recorded today's sessions, about 30 minutes of it. I don't have anything bad to say about what I played so far. It's very much a computer RPG-esque computer RPG. The whole thing, which I love, can be played with just a mouse. All of your HUD stuff is on the screen to click. All that stuff. I love, like, the first Witcher game is a great PC game because of that. But it is very much Diablo. It is just Diablo. It's like a more RPG-ish, like you have a party, and you can play through the whole thing with co-op up to 8 players together, which is cool through the story. But it is Diablo. It is clicking enemies. They die pretty quickly. There's loot tables. You get loot. You get better gear. It is just Diablo.
Is the default name Farmer?
So, you play as create a character who is a farmer.
Okay.
Now, the covers on this game, by the way...
Things are looking up.
Yes, the cover of this game and its sequel features a red-headed woman with like some armor and she's got a sword. And I don't know if that's a character in the game. I read a synopsis. I don't think it is. But that is what the default created character looks like. So I named mine Dungeon Siege Lady because I didn't know what to name her. And guess what? the first NPC you see runs across a bridge is an old man named Norik, and then he dies and says that the Krull or whatever the orc stand-ins are in this movie are. So actually, I wasn't expecting this movie to kind of actually be about the game, because calling it a dungeon siege tale to me says, like, yeah, it's within that game's world, but we're not adapting the game, if that makes sense, like just the way the naming convention was. So to see it vaguely be like, yep, these are the bad guys they're attacking or whatever. So I own all 3 of those games on Steam, but for this episode, I wanted to make sure I had something physical. And so I went on eBay and, with PC games from the 90s and into the mid-2000s as well, they came in cardboard boxes, but because there isn't, like, a standardized platform to be like, this is the case designed for them, publishers could make whatever they wanted. In the 90s, you had all sorts of shapes and sizes. I personally love that IDOS's games came in trapezoids, like triangular-shaped trapezoids, like a triangle with the top cut off. I love all those big, stupid boxes that are meant to, like, scream at you on the retail shelf. But for this one, it was just a standard kind of big, just rectangular box, and eBay had them for too much, and I can't really store that type of material well. So instead, what I bought off eBay is a copy from, I believe, British's or England's Windows XP magazine, Tweak XP software, which comes with a demo for Dungeon Siege on it. So there's a demo for
Tweak?
Tweak XP. Because, Devin,
You tweaking?
you might not know, but this single disc can do 6 things. It
That's a
can
lot.
boost your modem, improve memory, shred old data, optimize your graphics, accelerate Windows XP, and even better, achieve faster downloads. What I assume this does is it
just
assumes
not
you don't
true.
know how to use a computer, and it says, let's just change the settings for you on your computer. That's the only thing I can think of that this does. But it came with some demos on it. There's Tony Hawk 3 is on here. But the main ticket is 183 megabytes of a playable demo for Dungeon Siege. So it is cool. And I will say, it does remind me of like RuneScape because it is click to move. It's not on a grid, but like it's one big like map. It's not like level based. It's an interesting kind of game. It is definitely the type of game in 2002. If I was playing PC games, even at the age I was in 2002, I would have gotten into it because it's relatively easy and like it looks decent enough. If it wasn't very like CRPG heavy in like its interfaces, this was definitely a game you would have seen on the Xbox and maybe PlayStation 2 because it's not that. I've seen better looking Xbox and GameCube and PS2 games than that. Granted, it's a bigger world, so okay, maybe it runs. And I don't know how it ran on computers at the time, but I could easily have seen this being an Ethan game if I was aware of it at the time. So, but we watched the movie, released in 2007.
We did.
Devin, if you had, since it looked like you had something you wanted to jump off with by saying before we go
No,
around the horn.
I'm just trying to. I just have Jason Statham the voice in my head. I'm like
he's
trying to.
He's
like,
at the
jump
ready.
it.
Your fingers on the Jason
Yeah.
Statham
Yeah,
trigger.
I'm just ready to say anything that could cue up something that I could say.
Okay.
And I was just laughing, just trying to think of something stupid.
We always entertain ourselves here on the Sonic Movie
And
Show.
I was laughing earlier because there was a small little Jason Statham in the background that made me laugh earlier, and he's just so tiny.
Hey man, I googled Jason Statham on Google Images, set the settings to big to large images, and then I cut his head out of every single one of them.
Yeah, right there.
and
He's
put him-
under Ethan right now.
Yeah,
that
oh,
little-
yeah, that's under here.
That's a good one.
He's just so tiny.
Yeah. We watched this movie. David, this was your 5th pick. I want to know what you were thinking as you went through this whole journey here. And, what do you think about the movie overall?
So I think I'm going to start by setting the stakes in that the last movie, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the last movie you guys watched from this director, is he a producer?
Director, yeah.
And a
Director.
producer.
For- last-
And also, I
So
think,
the
a
last-
writer as well.
so- Okay, we'll get into it. But so the last movie by this guy was Postal that you watched, right?
Correct.
Or have you watched another one? Okay.
Yeah, Postal.
So,
it was
that was the only
Blood
F
Rain,
tier-
Postal, and then now this one.
So the only thing I had to go off of was Jason Statham was in it. I felt that his acting. I mean, everyone loves a good Jason Statham movie. They're the same movie every time, but you'll love them every time because he's Jason Statham. He beats up the bad guy, and his voice is just perfect. So going into this, much like the last movie we watched, I had the lowest expectations. I was hoping for zero racism. That was my goal. Is like, give me an E, give me a D. And I'll tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take away that this is an Uwe Boll movie, because I think there's going to be a little bit of prejudice. I think there is going to be a little prejudice from you guys because of his producing. But here's what I'm going to say. The acting in this was so good that it almost hid the terrible script multiple times.
Eyes away of disbelief here. Continue.
The actors are the main thing that is holding this movie together, and I think it raises it up way higher than I would have thought it was. I'm gonna say number 2. This movie's pretty old. It's 2008. So, like, if you were a kid in 2008, you loved Lord of the Rings, you're probably going to like this movie. Like, it's just corny fighting orcs. Like, there's pretty low stakes, even though his literal kid got killed in the beginning of the movie. Spoiler, sorry. That was brutal. I did not think he was gonna.
They should have watched it if they're watching a review of a movie that's 2 decades old.
Yeah, I mean, so that I think there was some brutal stuff in it like that. But I really didn't think it was that bad. I mean, there was like weird things in it, like. During one of the large battles, the king on his side had ninjas randomly, and the ninjas were doing ninja things, and they were doing them a lot. They were flipping just like ninjas do.
Yeah, we saw the same flip shot
and then
over and
they
over,
would murder someone, and then they would flip again. But I mean, I think the fighting scenes were just like. Okay, I don't think they were the worst fighting scenes in the world. The other thing so my 2 main gripes with this movie are the script, like I said, and the CGI. Okay. They should have just taken the CGI moments away, figured out how to do without them. I think the CGI moments they wanted to put in, and it lengthened the movie too long.
Can I interject real quick? Can I interject
2
real
hours.
quick?
Go ahead.
No, none of my opinions. I will say there are 2 cuts of this movie. There is an hour and a half that was in the theaters, and then there is the 2-hour version, which is on Blu-ray and what we
watched the direct. Basically,
Okay,
technically, it's not
cut.
labeled as such, but.
On Wikipedia, it says it
127 minutes, right?
Okay.
It basically
this
lists
was
cut, yeah.
So this was the extended edition of Lord of the Rings, which I will admit I can't stand Lord of the Rings. I think it's just so boring to me. I think the problem is I started on the extended editions, and it was just so boring. To me, this plot is not that much different than Lord of the Rings.
Yo, that is
let him finish, Devin. Let him finish, Devin.
That's a clip, at least.
Let him finish.
Yeah.
He's wrong, but let him finish. Say your piece, David.
Yeah, I mean, that really kind of is my piece. I just think there is, like, this slight need in the beginning. Lord of the Rings. Oh, there's this bad ring. I need to go to a volcano. Okay. This one almost has more of a plot. He killed his entire family. Like, I'm going to hunt down this person who killed my entire family. That makes way more sense to me. So yeah.
Okay.
I think that's my piece. I already know.
Dave is not lying with
guys,
his opinions. I don't think he's being disingenuous here.
No, I just like the way you said, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I already know that I feel like you guys are going to give this
No, I mean,
not a fair shot because of the director.
I think you...
go ahead.
Well, Devin?
I don't know, man. I get where... I'll say this. Where David drafted it, I'll say I was never going to draft Uwe Bill film on my draft board.
I think that's why we decided next season, because we all want to do it again, I think.
Yeah.
We're going to have like an extra... One of the movies, a required pick is one of his movies. Of like,
Which
there are
might be
going to be
great
3 of
chaos
them.
to
We
it,
each
yeah.
need to pick one of them, type of thing.
Uh,
So something like this doesn't happen to someone innocent.
right.
Go on, Devin.
I don't even think, like, I think Uwe Boll aside, there's a lot of major problems with this movie. I went back on my notes and wrote talking points for this one. I don't normally do that.
I'm interested.
Where is it? It's called Why This Movie Sucks. It's the notes.
You were
the first thing that really hurt me, you talking about the actors acting, and I agree. I think they did the best that they could. And I used to be this movie's changed me in the sense that I used to believe a bad movie could be elevated or taken out of the depths by great performances. I think of we watched so many of the Vin Diesel movies. There were some Vin Diesel movies where, like, if Vin Diesel didn't do his thing in this movie would have been bad. But we were interested enough, he kept it going. Sometimes an actor steals the show, right? Vin Diesel, another example, in the original Fast and Furious. It was supposed to be Paul Walker's story, but Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto kind of stole the spotlight by the end of the film.
In Pitch Black, they changed the movie to be about him because they're like, oh,
Right.
shit, we like this guy.
But I felt this pit in my stomach watching this entire movie because I felt so bad for these actors. Because this is a great lineup. Are you like peak? This is a pretty good lineup for 2007.
It was an amazing lineup.
It also
You got
includes
Jason
Ray Liotta, but sure.
But you have Ron Perlman, who just came back from doing the Hellboy movies, which were well received at the time. You have Jason Statham, who is starting to become more of a household name because of Fast and the Furious, Crank.
Not quite yet. Fast and Furious not at this point.
Well, he's getting there, but like he's starting to become a name. Matthew Lillard, which seems to keep popping up in
fucking
these movies.
Shaggy's in this movie.
Shaggy's in this movie. You have Burt Reynolds. John Rhys Davis is in it, which was like fucking Gimli's in this movie. He's fucking Lord of the Rings. Gimli is in this movie. A veteran of arguably the best fantasy films of all time, and I feel almost offended that David said they're bad in any capacity, because it's
Mid.
You're like 1 out of like 1,000 people who really says that, which is fine.
Says more about him than the movie, but that's up for him.
So my first point is I felt bad for these actors because I can tell they tried, but they were given the worst script. I looked it up. All the people who did the writing for this movie have done jack shit since. There's a reason for that. Because this was an awful, awful, awful script. Bad dialogue. They didn't know what tone they want to do, which is one of my other points, which is it goes from a serious revenge story to, hey, there's comedic moments, almost like Dungeons and Dragons level of, hey, me and the boys rolled bad on when we're going down the zip line. I'm like, that felt way out of place and not funny. I felt bad for Ron Perlman because I'm like,
he's been in a lot of bad movies, though. I think he's used to it.
But that's what I'm saying. That to me, like this movie, like hurt watching because of all the people were trying to. Jason Statham was trying to do all the cool stunts and martial arts, and I was just like, that's one thing. And also the fucking color gradient is
the
white.
fucker.
That fucker. I don't love I mean, some people. I'm gonna pull Zack Snyder into this conversation because this is around the time he did 300, and then started doing things like Watchmen as well. I think it was 2008, 2009. This has the Zack Snyder color palette in this movie and color grading that I hate. So that's just another
ultra surrealism type of like
this weird like dark shadows and like weird lighting coming from weird spots. It creates this like shadow effect that I just don't like. And then there's a lot of editing choices that were, and this could have been because of the director's cut. Maybe they tried to squeeze in more scenes. So I'll caveat on that at this point. There was this weird times where they would cut away from a conversation to another one, and it felt very jagged. The biggest example was we see the tree women, the whatever you want to call them, and then they literally are talking to Jason Statham's character,
dryads,
and she says something, and not even a second goes by. They cut right back to another conversation. The person starts talking, and it was like there was no like wait 2 seconds of them looking at each other, something to breathe. Because I was like, we're going to this. And there's multiple times like this happen where it's just weird cuts to different things. This could be like a director's cut thing where they just threw in more stuff. And the other thing was, it was too long, 2 hours. Maybe it was an hour and a half. This would be a little bit better.
I think
of just tolerating down. Or
we have to give it a little credit.
Let him finish
because
first.
we watched the director's cut.
This is the version that's available.
Right,
I think,
but
I don't know. I think
extended.
it's worse because the more Uwe Boll touches things, I think it worse it gets because he doesn't know how to tell a story. He doesn't know how to cut a story. If anything, I hate to fucking give Postal credit. Postal felt more fluid of a movie than this, in terms of just like its pacing. For me, I don't like how some of the characters were treated. Ron Perlman's Norik character felt like he was on this journey with them. He's going to beat it to the end, and he just dies. Cool, dude. Why have him in there in the first place? They kind of just kill him off, and they're like, and then no one remembers him. No one asks about him afterwards because it doesn't matter.
That's true.
As opposed to Lord of the Rings, where people be crying and shit because this guy died, because Boromir died.
Yeah,
that's how the first movie ends.
That's because we spent 10 hours with them.
Right, you care about these characters.
It's
almost like at the end of this movie,
a person, our roommate.
At the end of this movie,
20 hours with
the daughter night lady helps, and she gets blown to the side, and we just never see her again. There isn't any like, yay, I get a happy ending type of thing too.
The other main point, which is, I was gonna compare to Lord of the Rings even before David brought this up. Lord of the Rings, one of the reasons that movie is, to me, very good, is it knows how to set scale of a world, a fantasy world. It tells you how long a journey is. It shows you how long a journey is. There's multiple times where I don't know how far this forest is from this village and his farm to this village to where the army camp is, to the other army camp. Going back to the cutting thing, there's one point where they're having Jason Statham as a hostage. They're bringing him from the trees down into the army camp. And then it cuts to the other army camp where the king is at, and they're doing dialogue. But I thought it was the same camp because they just cut in between the two camps, but they look exactly the same, except for the big orc guys and the soldier guys. But if you cut inside a tent, it tells me it's the same spot. Just once again, bad editing. But
the armies all wear the same armor too.
Yeah, and sense of scale. Once again, so it doesn't. It feels like the castle is like 10 miles away from this village and this village. The forest is 5-minute walk from here. Like, it doesn't feel like a journey ever happened. John Rhys Davies, freaking Gimli from Lord of the Rings, and the Ent from Lord of the Rings. He goes and saves Jason Statham's character, the bee farmer slash beekeeper.
Bee farmer?
Beekeeper and bee farmer. He goes and saves him and then goes back and does his thing. And that, I'm like, shouldn't they be like hundreds of miles apart? That's why I thought this was, and it just feels like.
Is this the mage?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the mage guy for the king. Like, he can just go anywhere.
They underdeveloped his powers. It was unclear. It seemed
I have stuff
like he
to talk
teleported like super far during the fight scenes. So I think that's what was happened, but 100% agree that was not telegraphed
But like him, he's like, oh, he's saying goodbye to his wife and kid. They're gonna go to the town over, and they get there what feels like in a quick 20 minutes. Like it wasn't even that far. As opposed, it felt like they were gonna be going on this long journey, and then when they leave, and when he and his, Ron Perlman and whatnot, all they're like, we're gonna go. We gotta go save her. Blah blah blah. I thought the rest of the movie was gonna be with them going onward. And then it turned into a comedic bit, D&D style, and then actually they're already there. And then they get captured, and then I don't know. The pacing of the movie is awful. The story is uninspiring. It felt like they were trying to do too many things. And I like Jason Statham in the role that David said of he has revenge. That's what Beekeeper is he gets revenge for the old lady he worked for, who got scammed, and then she kills herself. And he's like, I'm gonna take revenge on that.
Spoilers, jeez, I haven't seen it yet.
You should see it. It's good.
I plan to.
That's good.
I don't mind like people being typecast in that, but yeah, the dialogue's awful. I actually hated this more than what you call it, Dead Trigger, because of the amount of the star
crazy.
Because amount of the star power in this. I am upset that we wasted a Matthew Lillard in a fantasy role where I thought he was cool, but it was so choppy. And then he kept appearing, and then and everyone else was at different levels of commitment to the movie. The battle scenes, I also agree, were kind of, There's very much just Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings multiple times, and it's hard to replicate Helm's Deep because it was well shot and well directed, as opposed to this, where people are throwing themselves in the catapult, and we're gonna do that 5 times because it's funny. Oh yeah, the ninja thing felt very. Hey, let's get a bunch of Asian guys to dress up as ninjas and randomly appear. We don't show them at all in the movie up until this point, and then we're just gonna. That was an Uwe Bollism to me, where it was.
Yeah.
This group of people is known for that, so we're gonna get those people. And I'm only pointing at this because of Uwe Boll's history of other movies we've done, where he will put in all the German people are Nazis because that's just normal.
May or may not be a belief system he may or may not hold as well.
But sorry, I'm rambling on too much, but I was not upset with Dead Trigger because that movie was kind of just like it was bad, but like at least it went over quick. It was an hour, 20 minutes. This was 2 hours, and there's just so many like fundamental problems with this. And I just felt so uncomfortable for all the actors involved. I would hate to be on this set and being like, and then seeing the final product. Sometimes, the set is, you work with the set. I don't know. Going from Neko Atsumi House, dude,
See, I watched this one first, so maybe I wonder if that's why I have a different opinion, because what was the one we watched right before this?
It's supposed to be Neko Atsumi House.
Before that.
Five Nights at Freddy's, which you watched 3-4 months ago.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind. Yeah, I don't know. I think
I just think there's
I still need
a
to
guy
go.
who I was just gonna say Neko Atsume House, smaller budget, and they know their scope. They had too big of a scope for this. I think that's the first problem. Too big of a scope for what the budget they had, or didn't use correctly. And then there's clearly just not enough talent in the writings room and the director's room, and that is shown consistently. In my opinion, and I even went in with the mind like, I'm gonna enjoy this movie because of Jason Statham, and I'm like, oh shit, Ron Perlman's in this. Oh shit, Matthew Lillard's in this. Okay, cool. And I was immediately like, no, this is I feel uncomfortable for Jason Statham throughout this entire movie because I feel like he put way too much energy into something that is shit.
Before you go, Ethan, I guess I feel like I know what Ethan's gonna say, and I'm not gonna go into that, but I feel like I'm just surprised.
Well, I can maybe explain it to you, your thoughts and feelings.
I will be surprised if you will be able to do that, but go ahead.
What I have to say isn't kind. Here's the thing.
I'm not going to roast David's character, though.
No. Listen, you can like what you like, and here's the thing. This is fantasy slop. This is the type of, maybe YA type of novel, fantasy slop, where high fantasy world to the kingdom. However, we do not do any politics, but any sort of conversation about the state of the world, what the king does, what blah, blah, blah. Any of that is just kingdom, king, cool, it's important. We have magic. It's vague on what these people do. It's kind of just like energy, and that's it. It's a lot of that stuff. We have knockoff orcs, and I get it. Budget, whatever. They look rubber as hell in ways.
It looks
that
very
is,
Power Ranger. I meant to mention
sure,
that.
sure.
Very
I have a lot. I have a lot
yeah,
to go on.
quality.
Though. I have a lot to say though. It's very much just like, hey, these are all elements you will find in a myriad of made-for-TV, like Sci-Fi Channel style, fantasy movies, pulp novels. Like, this is a pulp novel in a bad way, where this is slop. This is a schlocky B movie, and it's complete garbage. It is completely uninspired in anything. It is 100%, I just want to do Lord of the Rings again. This movie opens with a good wizard-like dude discovering that there are orc-like creatures working on some shit in a fiery lava-type environment. We then cut to the Shire-type music while a small boy tries to pull sweet potatoes out of the ground or whatever those vegetables were with his dad, and we get all this lessons about hard work and labor and just living the simple life before call to action, our hero needs to go do things beyond himself for the sake of the world. We have random forest people. We have goofy little, here's our Ron Perlman knockoff Legolas. Here is brother-in-law that is kind of there doing stuff until we don't need him anymore. This entire movie goes through random arcs where, like, legitimately, and I'm not being facetious here, the battle in the forest before the king is shot starts to begin, and I'm like, cool, so this is the final fight. And I pause the movie, and I see there's a fucking hour left! And I'm like, what the hell? We had 3. There were 3 acts already. There were 3 acts already. And then we had a 4th act, and then we had a 5th act. Devin, you talked about how Ron Perlman just dies, and that's it. He died, and I don't want to nitpick on, like, how things happen in that sort of sense, but, like, man, I don't believe that character decided to spring the fight immediately after getting... They don't even know where they are in the cave systems. Then he just dies. It felt undeserved, worthless. Matthew Illard's character, I enjoyed how much I hated him. But the character was a waste because he doesn't accomplish much on what he wants to do. He's not quite the sniveling, like, nephew type of guy in any of these types of fantasy slops. And then when he gets his comeuppance, we do not see what happens. He is literally dragged off screen, and then we move away. I wanted to see the look in his eyes when he realized he is dead. Like, he has no backup. He doesn't have I'm the king, therefore you can't kill me anymore. I wanted to see him dead, because that would have been cathartic for how that character was. He deserved that, right? You have great actors like freaking... I almost said Kurt Russell. Burt Reynolds as the king there. Wasted opportunity on what he does. Everything. Like, when we talked about, Devin and I, on the Blood Rain movie, we were like, damn, they had Michael Madsen in this movie. And he was drunk on set. I don't know this for a fact, but goddamn, he acted like he was just drunk when he was filming all this stuff. Wasted.
Meatloaf was the best actor.
We joke about that, but that's true. That's true. And that's a shame. I mean, rest in peace, Meatloaf. But that's a shame that was true. And I look at this movie and I'm like, I mean, I know Jason Statham does not want to be in serious acting roles. Right? He does not want to. He's said that many times. He wants to be in action-type movies. Just doing that type of stuff, because that's his background. Okay, so we throw him in here, and it felt like they were like he was probably like interested in like, okay, so how is this fighting gonna work? Like, I don't know. You just here's your prop. Start doing stuff. It felt completely uninspired. The action felt like it wasn't confident in what it was doing, so the camera work didn't really show much of it. We talk about the ninjas flipping. I swear there was 1, maybe 2 shots of ninjas flipping, and then they reused them over and over. Kind of reminds me of the vines coming down from the top. They use that 5 times. It's the same shot of the same 5 vines coming down. A lot of that stuff. We talk about the CG and whatnot. The effects look terrible. It is. I always am interested. I have a soft spot for the whole thing of like some sort of teleport thing where like your body comes layer at a time. I find that interesting to see someone's veins and then skeleton and whatnot. Oh, that's kind of cool. But beyond that, I mean, fucking whenever Ray Liotta's in his like weird vortex thing looking through the eyes, he is wearing normal clothes. He's wearing a leather jacket, slacks, and just a green button down. He's wearing normal. Did he refuse to get in costume? Did he just be like, no, fuck this? His hair is slicked back like he's in what is in Goodfellas again. You know what I mean? Why does Jason Statham have a boomerang? There's so much of this movie that is like...
I was wondering if that was part of the game.
In the game, I was going to ask that too. Was that
I mean, you can have a bow and arrow and you can have ranged magic, but I would say I only played 30 minutes of the video game. There is no like Zelda-style boomerang mechanics. Maybe, but still. It was funny in a way that it wasn't trying to be.
But still, I feel like if it's in the video game, that's fine.
It wasn't used to any effect that was worthwhile. I will say that.
In the movie?
Listen, in the movie.
He did stop using it after a certain point. They just
because it got lodged into a tree, and then he never grabs it.
He's like, "Oh shit!"
I think it was.
Let me finish. Here's what I'll have to say. Because this is now the 1, 2, 3 movies where I feel like David and I and Devin's usually on my side. Are just really have opposite views, and it's a battle. And I know I can come off as like some sort of pretentious, like, David, you're an idiot and you just don't know anything, and I know things, and therefore your opinions are null. I understand I come off the way, and I'm sorry. I don't mean that. But to just kind of... I understand where you're coming from, David. I get it. Not the Lord of the Rings thing, beyond the fact that, like, you've seen everything that is obviously inspired by Lord of the Rings and just doing the thing that was established in a genre by Lord of the Rings first, and then you see Lord of the Rings. I get it, so, like, that's that. But as far as this movie comes from, when I say this movie is fantasy slop, I don't necessarily mean that in and of itself, those two words are indicating a bad thing, because it's one of those things where it's like, yes, guess what? George Lucas and Steven Spielberg read a shit ton of sloppy pulp novels of guys going on adventures and fighting Nazis and whatnot. And then they made something that was inspired by that with Indiana Jones, right? Like, there's so many, like, young adult novels of teen dystopia and fighting the man and this and that, and they're all just kind of different levels of garbage. And for fantasy novels, there are so many of them that are just like this movie, and they're serviceable to an audience, and they work for an audience that is undiscerning. This is a movie for people that want to just, they turn on the TV and there's stuff going on, and it's fine. This isn't a good movie at all. I will say this, though, before I go in. This is a better movie than Blood Rain, and then which therefore makes it a better movie than Postal. But this movie also has, like, 10 times the budget of those movies. I looked ahead, and I know this will technically change how we think about the next two in the Name of the King movies, should we ever watch them. None of the characters carry over between this movie and the next one, and then therefore the next one and the one after that. Also, the budget on this movie was $60 million. Made $13 million in the box office, $14 million on DVD and Blu-ray sales. So it's still lost overall. The next movie's budget, less than $10 million. The one after that, half the budget of the second movie. We're talking $3 million, all right? The star of Dead Trigger, Dolph Lundgren, I don't know how you pronounce his name, is in the second movie as, like, the guy. All right? There's, like, no budget on all these. So when I say this movie is better than Blood Rain had 3 sets. This movie had enough budget to travel all throughout Vancouver to film. That's where they filmed this movie. All throughout Vancouver to film different forests and actually have, like, a waterfront, rocky waterfront to film for their set with the buildings with the town being attacked. This movie had a higher budget, which therefore allowed them to do a little bit more interesting things, which then therefore just inherently makes it better than Blood Rain if they're both just equally as shitty. Just numbers in that sense.
I guess I thought we were not accounting for budget.
We weren't.
Okay.
However,
so then basically what you said doesn't count.
It 100% counts.
To be fair, we accounted for budget with Neko Atsumi House. I think it is to me, I'll just speak for myself. I think it is a fair thing of how do you use money is a determinant of how good of a director or a producer that you are.
Yeah.
Because there's been plenty of Marvel movies that have spent $700 million to make, and they look like shit.
Right.
So versus A24 $50 million at most budget, and they'll be like, oh, that was well shot.
And a lot of this budget went to just simply having a lot of guys and then building some sets, but we still take a lot of time in forests that all look the same, rock areas that all look the same, and just bad effects, bad CG effects, just legitimately horrible effects.
2007 especially, this it was pretty brutal.
Right. There were practical things those were, I imagine, rubber-ass masks that all the orc knockoffs were wearing, and they still didn't look good. They still looked like backyard wrestling with rubber masks on.
I wrote down that the costumes are not the best.
It gave me Power Ranger vibes in terms of just the bulkiness and just blockiness, and then with Jason Statham's basically kind of martial arts combat that he does in all his movies, which is fine, but for a fantasy movie, it feels very out of place a little bit for me. And that, but that level of action just felt very like Power Rangers, which is cool. I like Power Rangers. I love that kind of style. But the tone of this movie set it up doesn't feel like that, and that's why it makes it feel bad, in my opinion.
There's just so many characters that feel like we could maybe get a character out of these characters, but there's too many. We cut back and forth between a lot of different scenes at once. Sometimes, and like Devin said, just awkward and bad times. And none of these characters really get to do much. I mean, let's think about it for real. Let's take away Burt Reynolds. Let's take away our good Magi guy, and let's even take away Ray Liotta, our evil Magi guy. Let's take them out of the equation because those are constants, and we have characters that maybe see and grow in some sense. We have farmer Jason Statham, who just decides at some point, yeah, I guess it makes sense for me to also do the good thing of being king or whatever. Cool, but I want to go on my revenge thing. I'm doing all this stuff.
Disagree.
At some point, we get into the conversation of he's like,
Wrong.
okay, well, I'm gonna use this army to save my wife, and then the general guy's like, that's obviously extremely selfish. But then has to be reminded, well, obviously he would be also saving the kingdom because in order to save his wife, he would have to kill the bad guy, blah, blah, blah. There's a point where just Jason Statham just unemotionally just pivots into this leadership role. Okay, we have that. We have our just, I don't want to call her useless because she does a thing, but just wasted opportunity of female character. I forgot what her name was.
Yeah.
But she was the niece or whatever. She's the daughter of our good Magi guy, who has some magic powers. She wants to be a knight, but she's royalty, and she basically gets nothing to do.
Yeah,
she gets. And listen, because I watched this movie for playing the game, and I knew the games had this red-haired, knight lady on it. I thought this was this character. It turns out I think that's just the creative character. They just had a redhead lady on the cover of the boxes. And I'm like, oh, this character is actually supposed to be the main character. I guess I'll mention them in the episode. That's not the case. But we introduce this character, does nothing. She captures Matthew Hillard's character kind of just by happenstance. She makes no decisions.
I think
she
we
makes
don't
the
even
obvious
need to
choices.
talk about this character because I think just overall we can probably agree that there is pretty large amount of sexism in it.
I mean, sure, but I'm not even really going into that. I'm just talking about this is supposed to be a main driving character that's supposed to be moving her story and her plot, and she doesn't do anything.
But
she really doesn't do
what
anything.
I'm saying. It's because Uwe Boll is well, yeah, but she's a woman, so she wouldn't be able to.
There was one line of dialogue that was low key, knowing Uwe Boll's seeing his other stuff. There was one line where I think it's I think it's his wife, or is it the when they visit when she visits the
when they're sitting down at the table.
Yeah, she mentions I think it's her.
Oh,
it's the wife. She's like, "Oh, I make them pay more because I'm a woman." Like I was like,
Yeah.
is that a woman thing? I don't know. It just felt very like.
Well, yeah, she was like, they don't take me serious. There
I'm
was
a woman,
something.
but then I make them
and
pay
I
more
pay
because I'm
more.
a woman, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
I was like,
I guess that was supposed to be her like getting back at them. Yeah, I can see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
But it felt very
It was
awkward.
just-
I'm not gonna say it's
yes.
sexist, but it was just very,
I think
very man
even-
wrote this dialogue.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think every situation here, it was always that these like women characters couldn't. It was literally said in the movie by the the lieutenant or the leader of the army. Oh, you can't be in the army because the army is for men.
Right. But then, that's not like a thing that gets challenged or anything. It's just, this is the natural order, and that's just it. Sorry. Like, you can
No, I
maybe,
know,
like,
but
sneak out of town or, like, out of your room and, like, do lady night things, but,
Yeah,
like,
I thought she
we're
was
not
gonna
challenging
leave
that.
and like do her own thing, and then she was gonna have some sort of revenge thing. Lord of the Rings literally does that with what's her name? She kills the
Well,
Nazgul leader because she's like, oh, no man can kill me. She's like, I ain't no man. Yeah.
Well,
I ain't no man.
I thought it was going to be like Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, like this like badass.
I want to ask
like,
you about
fighter
that
woman.
because you have seen all of Game of Thrones, and I know you generally
I haven't seen
liked
any of it, and I haven't finished the books, but
I won't spoil anything. But I was just gonna ask David, would you? Because you said you'd put this movie above Lord of the Rings. Would you? How do you compare this?
Don't clip that. I did not say that. I just said I did not say.
I'm gonna clip it regardless because it's gonna be great content.
oh yeah, my God, we're gonna get so many downvotes on that clip. It's gonna be great.
That's fine.
I mean, I'll leave
It's
in one of
what
us
it
being
is.
like, "What?"
Yeah.
But no,
David, can you just
how do
say
you
the
compare
phrase
this-
"Uwe Boll's a better director than Peter Jackson"?
oh,
No, absolutely not.
I should
Immediately
clip that.
We could go viral, David.
We could.
Uwe
Boll might
there's-
come on the show.
Man, there are just so many Lord of the Rings comparisons
No,
in that. Like, I discover more as we
Hold
keep
on,
going
hold
on
on.
in this conversation.
I just wanted to say, I want to ask David. No, I know you saw like Game of Thrones, and I know like people have the ending being controversial, but I'm just talking about like maybe even the first 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. And obviously, I know people like say that critical acclaim because of it's more of a drama with high fantasy elements. How would you compare that to this in terms of why you think this is more? Not saying this is more entertaining than Game of Thrones, but I want to see your comparison. Because I think Lord of the Rings we're not going to agree on, so I want to agree on something I know we both like fantasy-wise.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it blows it out of the water.
Which one are we talking about blows which out of the water? Make your statement very clear, David.
And I know it's a TV show to a movie,
I mean,
by the way.
Game
I
of-
know that's kind of...
Yeah, I mean, Game of Thrones. I mean, it's so far away above. I mean, that TV series has everything this needed in terms of a good story, good writing. I think that it had almost as good of actors as Game of Thrones, and I guess that's one of the things that redeems some of this movie for me is the actors pushing through. I feel like they were given the script and they were like, what the fuck? Like you guys were saying. And then they were like, well, like, we know we are all good. So like, let's really try here. And like, we have to do something because we can't let this be the stinker that this writing wants it to be.
I will just point out, David, you said that Game of Thrones has everything this needed to have, and then you listed the most core important parts of storytelling. So what you're saying is this movie didn't have anything.
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I think
And I'm not trying to do a gotcha
truly
with this, by
think-
the way. I'm just really trying to get like where David's coming from. 'Cause
You said you don't
Yeah.
like this, but then you also like this. Yeah.
I'm
I
not trying to
gotcha.
do that.
Yeah.
I think personally, you guys are falling into a trap of comparing this to fantasy movies that are known to be great. Even if I don't like Lord of the Rings like you guys do, I mean, this is like, it's like comparing a mortal to a god, right? In terms of fantasy, like, this is not how we are looking at fantasy. Like, this is not a fantasy podcast, right? Like, this is a video game movie podcast, and compared to many of the video game movies we have watched, I think this is a lot better. Even God, what is it? What is the one Devin picked? Or he knew a lot about the lore, the animated one.
Mortal Kombat.
Mortal
Legends.
Kombat.
Battle of the Realms.
Yeah, Battle of the Realms. I think it feels to me like if Uwe Boll was directing that, it would have been as bad. It would have been like the same movie. And I guess I don't know where I'm going with that, maybe. I just think
Are you saying that
this was better than Battle of the Realms because just straight because of the acting in this movie.
You're saying as a video game movie? David's looking at it. I think he's saying is or my understanding is we're going with too high expectations of a fantasy movie, or at least elements of it.
Well, I mean, it's okay to have
compared
standards.
to Lord of the Rings, for
well,
example. But
Here's the thing, David. I will just you are. I will say I will agree with you to an extent on your assessment of Devin, at least my approach on this. When you say, well, I'm not going to speak for you, Devin.
If it's an assessment of me, I'm like, oh damn, I'll take it risk.
Yeah. When you say like, oh yeah, we're comparing this to Lord of the Rings, well, guess what this movie wants to be compared to? Lord of the Rings, because it's doing everything that freaking movie is doing. So this movie wants you to be thinking about all of those types of things because, oh my god, we're doing it too. So you can't
I would argue if that's the case, then we need to readdress many of these video game movies because they are not even as close to as good as the video games are. That they are
the
trying
video game
to be.
Curve, though.
That's true.
I agree. But I think the way you guys are approaching this is not taking into account the curve, even without you giving a rating.
Listen, I said this is better than Blood Rain. This so far is the best Uwe Boll film I have ever seen. We have ever seen, I guess, because we both all seen this movie.
Yeah,
I think there's more because there's more quality actors in it. I think
we haven't given out our tier rankings.
No,
shocker! I'm still going to be low, but like I'm not going to sit here and say it's an F tier. But here's the thing: like even within all of this stuff, this isn't a good movie, like at all. This is not a good movie.
Yeah, like if you
just
take
because
away
they had
fantasy,
money to throw around doesn't necessarily make it good.
Yeah. I think for me, like the reason I'm comparing it to fantasy is because, like what Ethan said, it wants to be compared to fantasy films, and I think yes, Lord of the Rings to me arguably perfected the fantasy movie, like of how to make a fantasy movie. Peter Jackson brilliantly found a book that's really dense. It has a lot of lore. There's chapters that are just like songs about the elves that no one gives a shit about unless you're a nerd, and he found a way to make something that's really nerdy, because before Lord of the Rings came out, people who like Lord of the Rings probably grew up in 1970 and read the books and got really into the lore, but there wasn't, the average person didn't care. How do you make an average person care about a fantasy world with characters and whatnot that are, have each their motive, but there was so much lore in it. What I like about Lord of the Rings is he picked out what was important and also can, do little nods to things, but showed you what was important. The Mines of Moria, there's one of them, Gandalf talks about it, Gimli talks about it, and gives you just enough that you can use your imagination to fill in the blanks, but it doesn't really matter because the goal is, we got to get through this. Or the Shire is shown as this, beautiful place and whatnot, and I'm sure in the book that there's much more in depth.
They spent a lot more time in the Shire, that's for sure.
Where, this family lives here and they were known for this. Doesn't fucking matter. Let's get what's more important. And I think that's why Lord of the Rings is great, is because it knows how to take out what is important in fantasy.
Right.
Granted, this isn't based off a book, but there's been plenty of fantasy movies prior to Lord of the Rings that maybe failed in some aspects because they try to do too much info dump of like, you got to remember these characters, you got to remember this backstory and whatnot. But some of the old, to me, like classic fantasy movies, that people like are the ones that are straightforward in the sense of, what are the character motives, but they also know how many characters to bring in. That's the issue with this movie. There's too many characters, too many subplots and whatnot. Lord of the Rings, you might find it boring. I think it's a good pace because there is a lot of characters. By the end of that third movie, there's a lot of characters, a lot of jumping around, but they build you up into it. The first movie is all about that fellowship. And there's literally like the journey of Frodo meeting this character. Okay, then we get to this character. We have 3 new characters. We get to know them through the Mines of Moria whole section. We move on. To me, he does a great job, great job at like pacing that. Pacing is bad in this,
right,
of showing characters. But even, like I said, don't even look at fantasy. I think with movies, when you have a lot of characters like this, you gotta know your pacing, and they didn't know their pace. They showed these characters in the beginning, they showed the farmer, then there's the other family they show, and then they die, but then the other guy lives, the brother-in-law lives, and he's gonna be with them. Okay, we don't really know much about him still by the end of the movie. Like, there's way too many characters. I know I'm rambling a lot, but I just think there's so many, like, I was just gonna say it's hard not to compare it to other things because that's what it, like Ethan said, are trying to base off of. But even if you don't do Lord of the Rings and do other movies like I'm blanking on the fucking movies that I'm thinking of. Well, it doesn't matter. My argument sucks now because I don't remember the movies.
That's okay. I think I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, where I just think that there's other movies you could compare it to as well, and I don't think these are it's well done either. And it, just from a straight filmmaking thing, even whatever genre it is, this could have been a science fiction. This could have been a true story, like or even a drama. And I don't trust that, based off what I've seen in here, to make it well paced and entertaining. I don't think anyone could have saved the writing. I think the writing is the biggest issue, and then there was some really bad editorial things done on top of it, and
there was sloppy work with editing. Where like when his wife's parents die, it's like one of the possessed orc knockoff guys. He's got them both like by like their necks, or like he's holding them up. And I'm having to like be in frame here when I do this, and like he just does this one thing where like he looks like he just squeezes just a little bit more and then drops them. And I'm still I wasn't sure in that very moment, did he kill them or not? Because they didn't like look. I just needed a second shot or like a 1 second long shot of like still moving mom. Okay, now we move on. It wasn't until when they moved back like, oh yes, no, they are dead. Like there was a lot of editing stuff like that.
Scene was. I'm gonna just disagree on that. That
okay.
was very clear. I mean, there's just so many things in that scene that set it up. It cuts back to him.
I understand the intent on what all that stuff is.
No,
but it was one of those things where like the
impact
on it all didn't do it for me.
No. So, twists his hands, snaps the neck. You hear a break as he twists both of their necks and then drops them. So I think there's a lot of things, Ethan specifically, I disagree with you on.
Okay.
There's things like, see, now I'm trying to remember some of the movies, by the way, rant there. So
sorry, I was just gonna say, if you needed time to think, I was gonna say a movie I was thinking of that I just could not for the life of me think of the title. Like Conan the Barbarian has a good pacing of random story about a random jack dude, and moving on. I know people talk about like Willow being one of those, like it's cheesy, but was very inspirational for people like Peter Jackson and whatnot. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think there's a lot of things in here that I'm not saying this is an amazing movie. I don't want to. I know, like, maybe we're playing it up a little bit. Like, I'm not saying this is an amazing movie. I do not believe that. But I think it's much better than you guys are playing it out to be. And I think you are not giving it the benefit of the doubt in many cases, such as that costume change when it cuts to him wearing a leather jacket. I thought the same thing. I think it was just camera shots, and it was not clear why he had the costume change. I paid attention more after I saw that, and it was actually a clear costume change because he was no longer pretending to be this good mage. So because he was courting that woman, and then after he switched into his, quote unquote bad guy clothes. That was not, shown well. But it was not like you portrayed it like he just forgot to put on his clothes. You know what I mean? Like,
I understand, and I do agree with you. That was a deliberate choice because he wears that throughout the rest of the movie. But it is just a weird costume because that's like modern clothes. He's wearing a leather jacket, like a fine leather jacket. It's one of those things where it's like
that, but it was a robe, I think.
I don't think
now
so.
I'm second guessing. I'm pretty sure it was a robe. It was cut at his chest, though. Like the shot was cut at his chest, so it looked like a leather jacket. But I thought it was robe.
It was longer than a jacket, more like a coat, but it was definitely a fine leather. But yes, I get what you're saying, David. I understand completely.
Yeah, and then I guess also, like, I think I just completely disagree with the fact that the farmer just randomly became, like, he just, like, in a moment decided he was going to be king. Like, it was...
He had no inner thoughts. He had no, like, actual...
There's no dialogue that I can remember.
Debate with himself on what he believes or what he wants.
Anything, I think
he's steadfast, the simple life, my family, which is important to him. We established that early on. And he maintains that and then he's just... He needs to be this character for the story to progress.
He's convinced over time.
I don't see that though. That's where I disagree. That's where it fails to me. Where I don't see him. I
felt like it was lame
actually shown
for him to be king because I feel like that goes against what they established in the beginning and throughout the movie. That the whole point of him doing this journey in the first place was to find his wife and then get revenge for his son. Why would he have any interest in being king? He's shown no interest in power throughout the.
He does state his ideals at the beginning. He calls himself farmer because he is what he is. He's not anything more than that, and that's how people should live.
But at the same time, it's like, that is such a classic story of, like, this guy is put into power because he doesn't want power, right? Like, that's the ultimate, this guy doesn't want power, that means we need him. So I don't think that's as bad as you guys are thinking.
But I think there's other characters who maybe deserve the. I thought halfway through this movie that our daughter princess there or whatever who wants to be a knight. I thought she was going to be queen at the end of this, and that felt like what would
she should have been. That would have been way better.
The general also seemed to have a better leadership skill than anyone else in the movie. And granted, he had some emotions to him,
and that's what this goes back to my point though of like this is why it doesn't make sense to me why he would be of any interest in power. It doesn't even feel right for the story. I don't know, just in your traditional fantasy sense. I feel like this story would have ended in a traditional fantasy sense. Would have ended be like, and I went back to my village with my wife, and we mourned my son, but I slept better at night knowing I slayed the man who took his life.
To me, that's a revenge story right there. He gave, he did the thing,
or he dies doing it. He stabs me in the chest, but I know I killed him. And then
but the point John is, Wick I guess,
was maybe not John Wick, doesn't die at the end of the movie, but like John Wick, he doesn't care about the bureaucracy of everything. He's like, I'm getting my revenge. Another revenge story. The Beekeepers, the movie he's in.
Don't spoil it for me.
I won't spoil it too much. It's just that like he does what he goes out to do, and that's it. Like to me, I think that's what makes a good revenge story.
Or like Kill Bill,
Kill Bill, same thing. I don't know. I just think I think when you set up other characters with this the traditional fantasy sense, and I know you say maybe that's not fair to it, but if the movie's trying to me fit in the fantasy world, you are allowed. It's okay if you follow those tropes, and even if it's expected, it feels satisfying. That's why the story that story element has worked traditionally. The hero who didn't think he could do it goes and casts the ring in Mount Doom, and he finally did it. He overcame odds he never thought he could do, and he was hesitant that he could do throughout the entire movie, but it was his fellowship that helped him. Even it came down to just his hometown friend at the end.
And he
doesn't
changed so much in that he literally cannot go home again the same. You know, that is 100% the hero's journey. But I'm using that example, but I'm saying, with that said, you can't. To me, I just think it breaks the rules of storytelling a bit to keep showing the audience, hey, this person thinks they deserve more. Hey, this person deserves more. This guy's all about duty. He did everything right. He doesn't get rewarded for it. She never actually gets to do anything. Oh, but the farmer loses his son, saves his wife, and then gets the person he wants, which was his end goal. And he's like, all right, I'm king now. To be fair, to be a little fair, we do not know what happens after he saves his wife because it ends with them making out. He could reject it and go home. To be fair, this movie doesn't establish what he thinks about that position, though. It just doesn't.
So I guess before you go, Ethan, we know Ethan. If he... So, plot-wise, if he doesn't become king, like, the whole reason he becomes king is because the kingdom will be plunged into darkness because the nephew would become king.
Plot-wise, that doesn't need to even be the thing, though. They can just decide what they need to do, but that doesn't need to be the case.
But the
it
writers
doesn't matter if it
decided
needs
that,
to be.
They didn't have to write it that way.
You guys are saying he doesn't have a reason, and now you're saying, oh, well, that reason didn't need to be the reason. So it's like he either had a reason or he didn't.
But they didn't show us a reason why he would care about the kingdom, because he's always stayed in his rural farm out in the middle of nowhere.
Because these orcs are coming to his place, like they have. That is why. Because the darkness is coming to him.
I understand what you're saying, David.
It will come to him again.
It's a story reason why he needs it. The story needs him to be king for that reason. I get it.
To me,
the
I'm
character
going back to the
does not
satisfaction.
have that reason, though.
Yeah,
it doesn't line up. There are ways to write around that and wait, because that's why when Matthew Illard he's losing the duel and but we just announced that the king's dead. I guess you can't kill me. I'm the king. And then what's his name comes out and says, "I present your new king, Jason Statham, the beekeeper." And then Matthew Illard's like,
which is funny, by the way. Everyone's like, "Who the fuck is this guy?"
Right.
I'd be like, "Who?"
Yeah, that's true.
Farmer. What?
It's one of those things where it's like, but why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it this way? There are ways to make the idea better. Where yes, okay, we can have a discussion on what it means to be a king. Who deserves kingship when we're in a situation like this? Because, the old king doesn't have any direct heirs, but then we discover this fucking 50-year-old man out of nowhere and be like, yep, this is your guy. Does he deserve it? We don't get any conversations like that. It is just fall in line tradition. This is what it needs to be. Yeah. When you can have a much more interesting story, which allows our main character, the farmer, to actually impose the question to himself and to others, does he deserve this? Does he even want it? Do other people want him to be a king? Do they think he deserves it? You know what I mean? There are ways to do what this movie wants to do much better with that transition.
I think I'm still going to disagree because you're asking for a Game of Thrones level of drawn-out political drama that we don't have time for, and lots of this movie should have been already cut. So I think any sort of political drawn-out drama would have made this worse.
We can replace parts of this movie with better parts.
I'm going to go back to even if the story, to me, it's not even like how they did the story at the end of the day. I think how they did the story was bad. But my thing is the characters and some characters that actually were shown enough to what their values are, what their reasons for, the things that they do. It just, to me, they set it up in a way where it seems like halfway through the movie, it's like, okay, Matthew Lillard's character is going to be the clear villain at the end of the day, and then maybe the other guy, or they're kind of going to fight each other, and one of them will win it all. And then there's the princess lady who wants to stop being treated, a woman caught in the castle, the princess stuck in the castle, she wants to go be a soldier or whatever. I thought maybe she could be king because she, whatever. It kind of set that up as like she's going to be an important piece in the story. Nothing. She isn't. She isn't important by the end of it.
Yeah.
And then the farmer's character, and this is where I get back to there's too many subplots. And the farmer's character was set up as like his goal is to kill the wizard, dark evil wizard man. And we knew that from the end. That was going to be at the end. And it was at the end. But then like they tried to add this whole subplot. Oh, he's actually the son and whatnot. It's like they didn't even need help. They could have just maybe if you got rid of that, it would be a little bit less drama you don't even need to do. But at the end of the day, it's like you set up these characters trying to hint to the audience, hey, this is what motivates them. Here's what they might need to be satisfied for you to be satisfied. I think for these kind of movies, whether it's a revenge story or whatnot, you need to have some sort of, you got to tell the audience what the character needs, and that will satisfy the audience, hopefully. And I don't feel satisfied by the end of this movie because they just started adding a thing that doesn't make sense for his character. They didn't show anything. They didn't have a dialogue where he even talks to his wife or talks to another character to be like, oh, I'm the son of the king and I don't want it. That would have been like, okay, he doesn't want it, but then why does he not want it? Or, oh yeah, actually I do want it. That makes total sense. Yes, they do some line about, oh, well, if he doesn't be king, the whole thing will fall. But why does he care? Outside of, they came and invaded his spot, but that only started happening when he noticed, oh, everyone's under attack. And then he went on his whole journey. He didn't start after he got out of the fight. He wasn't like, okay, we need to rid the world of darkness. He said, I need to get my wife back. That's the difference to me. If you want to end the world, like to me, the reason to be king would be like, I want to end darkness, which is there's been characters like that where like, that's Gandalf's whole character. I want to kill Sauron. I want to destroy the ring, destroy Sauron, and we can rid the evil of Middle Earth here. Like we can end it forever, and like, yes, it doesn't affect people in the Hobbits, and that's why he goes and gets Frodo, because he's the son of Frodo's the son of Bilbo, and to me it's like, but of course, they have 3 movies to build that up. But by the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, why Frodo's doing it, which is he doesn't even want to do it necessarily, but he knows it's the right thing to do because he's a good freaking person. He wants to end the...
and he's been told he's the only one that can, so it's more of a begrudging thing.
And there's also an element of he was inspired by his... sorry, he's not the son, he was the uncle. Or his nephew. His uncle Bilbo had this crazy adventure, and he's like, oh, I want to have my own adventure, until he realizes what the stakes are.
Right.
But then he realized, like Ethan said, I'm the only one who can do this. The ring, is my burden
Cursed,
at this point.
Yes, bird.
And like I said, it shouldn't even compare to Lord of the Rings again. But at the end of the day, I should, because even on Wikipedia here, people are saying many critics of the film found resemblance to the popular Lord of the Rings films.
I will just I will add this to tie all of my stuff up. All right. I will say I will do one more Lord of the Rings comparison, and I have something to piggyback off what David said. Lord of the Rings, as the entire story, you take the characters away, and we're just talking about the overall kind of story and message. It is about the fact that we are in status quo in many different ways. We have these hobbits who live peacefully. Other people's problems are not our problems until someone has been forced to leave their home and make that problem theirs. They could have lived a nice life, but they don't. We have these kingdoms that don't help each other, corruption on the inside. The bad guys are going to win because everyone is divided. The whole thing about this movie is people need to come together. Gondor must be saved. All this stuff needs to happen. These characters need to come together. The Fellowship needs to be a thing. Gimli and Legolas need to be friends in order to survive and succeed in all this stuff. And we look at the whole point of that movie is he denies it, but there's a lot of similarities to World War II, supposedly, although he specifically denies it. I forget the name. The author of Lord of the Rings denies anything like that.
Tolkien.
Tolkien, there you go. I kept wanting to say R.L. Stein. I'm like, no, it's not the Goosebumps guy that wrote it. So that's a story that has some high concepts that can, easily get overlooked because of just the fantasy stuff and how new all that stuff was at the time. And obviously a lot of stuff as aped what that structure of world and all that stuff, because that is what's interesting. So, to wrap up everything, David, you mentioned earlier, not too long ago, when I was talking about how, well, we can replace this scene with something more dramatic, more interesting, have these characters discuss what it means to be king and whatnot. And you said, if I can paraphrase, what I'm asking for is something that the movie is not supposed to be doing, or not attempting to be doing. I'm asking for Game of Thrones in something that is not. And I agree, because what this movie is fantasy slop. It is pulpy. It is not trying to be high concept as something like Lord of the Rings could be, which isn't all that high concept. It is very basic. Like, in order to survive as societies, we need to give a shit about each other and help each other and actually do things we don't want to do to help better our world, because otherwise we all fail. We all need to come together. This movie's not trying to do any of that stuff. That doesn't necessarily make it okay that its story also then sucks. Like, it can still fail at being a nothing story of a guy wanting to do a thing, and then we have this kingdom that's fighting these other guys until we're done with all of that. It is still okay that it's not trying to be as... It's ambitious, is what I will say. That's the best thing I will say about this movie, is it is ambitious. It just fails at doing that stuff, because I don't think the talent involved with writing and producing and directing this movie knows how to do something like what they want to do. And we end up with, I could easily, and this may or may not be the case, but I can easily imagine someone not that wrote this movie, helped write this movie, not even understanding Lord of the Rings to the basicest extent that I said. Someone who is not a writer, someone who is not that, an expert on any of that type of stuff. Even I can see some of that stuff, and I get the impression that these people aren't even looking at it like that, and they're like, oh yes, all of these elements, let's just do this stuff again, and then it will work, and it'll be fine. So that's my whole thing altogether. I don't really have anything else new besides just reacting to what anyone else says. So that's all for me.
Yeah,
Devin, you have the floor.
Hold on. Before you go, Devin, I want to respond to
he parried your hand raise.
Well, I just want to say it before I forget it.
Sure.
Because he was bringing up, and I'm already starting to forget it now, the point of bringing, and this will be the last time I bring this up, because I think we've belabored the point maybe too much at this point, but
no, it's a good conversation though, regardless.
I just disagree that he doesn't have a reason to be king. So I think I have a question for you, maybe, and maybe we disagree, maybe morally. I don't know. I'm interested in your perspective on this. I understand that we can argue about what the movie successfully or unsuccessfully portrays, but I guess the idea of he wants to save his wife, the king, who we find out is his father, says, you need to become king. He says no. His father brings up the point of, I know you want to save your wife. This is saving your wife. For if you don't become king, the demons will come knocking and kill your wife. And so in this moment, he realizes, yeah, that really sucks that that's true, but it is true. And he needs to take up the mantle. Like, do you disagree with that, I guess?
Are you asking Devin?
Yeah. Devin.
Oh, I thought you said Devin earlier. I'm sorry. No, I mean, I get, like I get where you're coming from, but the what they've shown in the, I go back to, it's not even like a moral thing for me. It's more of a, what they show in the movie to me is misguiding the audience too much to what you're expecting. And I don't mind things being unexpected, but I think there's a way to do it. And I don't think, like, even in that scene, that's cool, but there's no, he still hasn't shown up at that point
There's not enough setup, is what you're saying. There's the
There's not enough of
reason
him
is
prior.
fine, but there's no setup for
Yeah.
us to. There's no prediction of this coming.
I would just say I don't see a reason why it has to be him. It could be anyone that could be king.
Why?
This movie hasn't established any reason why it needs to be
It
the
said-
bloodline thing, though. You know?
That is the reason, though, that they. But like, we can't say. I don't know. I feel like it's. It doesn't seem fair to be like, yeah, but it would have been better if we shifted it to be this story instead. It's like I'm just judging it based off of this
Well,
lore.
I mean, I just go back to
in this
it
lore,
doesn't-
it
I
has to
don't-
be a bloodline.
Yeah, I don't think they showed enough to tell me why he'd be interested in King, regardless of what the king says to him. Oh, it's the only way you can save your wife? Why? Nothing has stopped him in this movie up to this point of getting what he needs to do, outside of he got captured, but he got out of that. He's one of the, like, this goes, going back to, like, the beekeeper, too, just to use that as comparison of another role he's been in. And this is obviously part of, like, better writing, in my opinion, is that, like, characters will tell their characters something. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden logically they're like, oh yeah, they're right every time. Like, there's gonna be pushback, or they'll be like, well, nothing has stopped me at this point. You can tell John Wick, you're gonna get yourself killed, and if all of a sudden they start showing, oh, he stops, and there's no like dialogue about that, to me, I think that's bad writing. That's why I go back to this.
I think
like,
I agree with you then.
where I'm saying is that, like, I don't like I get the logic is there in the sense of maybe, okay, yeah, he needs to be king so that he can access to armies, but there's no final battle in the sense of he needs to go fight the wizard up in his castle, and there's a battle, he needs an army to get in. You know, they sneak in at the end of the day. Like, it could have been anybody to do that.
Well,
So to me, it's just, at the end of the day, it's like they didn't show enough for me, and I believe the rest of the audience who probably is watching this, I don't think there's enough there to show why he needs to be king, and also why he would want to be king. Those two things. And to me, they've been hinting at just like his whole story arc was revenge. And his interest in politics or power isn't shown. I think in a traditional or in fantasy slop, there's got to be a reason. You know, oh, I always wanted to be a king when I was young, or I'm tired of the farming life, or anything like that. I think
he needed to be shown why his previous or always held belief system isn't the ideal he needs to be right now.
Honestly,
he needed to kind of fail at something in order to be shown
honestly,
the better way, I guess.
The fantasy
is how it
slop
would normally work.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
I would say going back to the fantasy slop thing, though, I think the best way to describe this movie is people playing D&D in their basement decide to make a movie, and they somehow got access to $100 million, and they realized their imagination does more work than what actual writing needs to do. It's easier to make sense of things when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
And be like, oh yeah, of course my character would do this, or this character would do that, and the guy tells you a quest, you gotta go do that. Okay, no second thought.
Right.
Actually,
don't question
Ethan,
the DM.
Yeah, like Ethan, actually your character you find out is king, and then it's like, oh, it's gonna be fun to be king. Why wouldn't I do it? That's what it feels like to me. At the end of the day, this is fantasy slop written in the sense of it feels very D&D. That's why, like I even mentioned at the very beginning, the whole like, oh, they're going down the rope, and then all of a sudden it's a comedy. That felt very much like a DM trying to, which is fine if you like that. That's cool.
Sure.
But for the beginning of this movie, it was very tonally Lord of the Rings.
It was different, yeah.
And that's where I was like, okay, like I think if the Dungeons and Dragons movie, I know we all saw that movie. That's a good example.
I love that. I know we all saw that movie.
I know we saw that movie. That's a good example of fantasy slop in knowing what works.
It knows what it is.
What it is. This doesn't know what it is, but outside of it, we want the epicness of Lord of the Rings. And if they wanted the element of a goofy fantasy thing, then that's fine. But it doesn't fit with a revenge story where you kill someone's kid and set this tone that like, oh, this is really bad. This isn't like, oh crap, the goblins came to our village and took all the children. We need to go save the children. Like there's
like
a difference
that
in
last
tone
Thor
there.
movie.
Yeah. So to me, it's just like this movie. To me, like story wise, is a badly executed version of the D&D movie. where it's just they tried to make it kind
Okay.
of goofy, and it felt like just a bunch of dudes. Honestly, it probably would be something the level we'd probably come up with at the end of the day if we got our D&D campaign and made it into a movie. I'm saying like in terms of like trying to fit as many characters
Yeah.
in because we think it's cool.
I'd like to say we would do better, but who fucking knows?
you know what I mean? But just like
Yeah, I understand what
it's
you're
easier
saying, Devin.
in a
I don't-
basement setting or whatever where the
Sure,
DM
stories are
can-
better in your head than when you write them on the page, for sure.
Right.
And I will
And I
say
think
this
is an
to,
example of that.
to what David was saying earlier, and I get it, and I agree. Throughout what the established, I think you used the word lore. I don't know if I would use that type of thing, but sure, we'll go with it. The lore of this movie, yes, it does matter that he specifically needs to be king in order for the bad guys to not win. I get it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's done a good job at the thing that it says it needs to happen.
Yeah,
So that's the other thing.
that's what I was
so
trying to
my
understand, and now I agree with Devin.
My two kind of angles, you can also agree with me, my two kind of angles on the whole thing
don't agree with them.
are
Just hit
what
it.
the movie is and how it fails at being what it says it wants to be, and what the movie could do to be better. Those are two different things, and I get it. And we can look at them in both of those angles. We can take the movie and say, here's how you can do a different movie that's these ideas, but a lot better, a lot more interesting. And here's what the movie is, and here's why it failed at all of these things, and little tweaks can make it better. Those are two both interesting conversations to be had. But what the movie is, as a whole, is just uninteresting. It's just uninteresting.
Or it's interesting in the sense of a Uwe Boll interesting of like how this guy keep getting this much
Well,
money to make something.
I-
that's how I look at it.
I
So
don't
how'd
want
they
to.
have
I
this
don't
many
want to speak
actors?
with any authority or any definitive statements about the man, but I have a feeling he, based off stuff he's said, he's inherited a lot of money from ancestors that were maybe in some sort of German army. Based off his words. And it is hard to tell how much of that is supposed to be a joke based off what he said, but I
But
don't
you
know.
see, then he makes fun of it at parts, but then he always seems to bring it back up. Before we end this discussion, I did just go back down the Uwe Boll thing, just with the whole.
I want to
Allegedly-
caution: we're not judging Uwe Boll. We're judging this movie.
I just want to quickly point out before I forget because I didn't remember until he
Okay.
just mentioned.
I would say
the
also
German
we judge
army.
Paul W.S. Anderson when he comes up too. Like he's a part of that conversation whenever
Yeah,
any of
it's
his movies
him.
come in.
It's him and Uwe Boll who've made the most video game movies.
Look,
if I'm
I
not
am
mistaken.
no Uwe Boll fanboy, but I'm just
I think
trying
you're the
to
biggest fan
be,
ever.
I'm just trying to be partial to a movie.
Well, wait. Make
and
sure while you're
not
about to.
hold it-
I'm just gonna say this.
All right,
I'm just
maybe
gonna
I'll
say
hold
this.
I'll hold my tongue.
Here are some of the other movie titles that
boy.
he's been a part of. Blood Rain, The Third Reich,
Maybe we'll just stop.
Zombie
I'm gonna
Zombie
keep-
Massacre 2, Reich of the Dead.
Okay.
What's the other one here? Oh, that's right, Auschwitz.
Like you're making it real
Doesn't he have
hard
a
for me
movie
to
where he
defend
himself
this
plays
movie.
Hitler?
I think so. And there's other ones that are in German, so I can't translate those for you. But there's been a lot of movies he's done that just happen to be about Nazis a little bit too
Yeah.
much sometimes, and not in a
And isn't
Not in
it
a
funny that I'm
anti-way.
going this far kind of way?
yeah. It's
Aren't they just like those South Park boys? Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think we can just all three of us can agree that we're not on the same page. But that's what makes the conversations like this interesting. Because I do appreciate that we are not a
and I'll say this. I agree.
unanimous,
I think it's fair
force
for.
on this.
I think what's good too with what David was saying too at the very beginning, which is like, there's always going to be a bias going in of like, yes, we don't like Uwe Boll, so and we've seen his other movies.
yeah.
So I think that of course, like you're going in with slightly different expectations, but I think that's part of when we talk about these movies too, is like making sure we know that bias. That doesn't mean like our rest of our critique though is incorrect either necessarily.
Yeah.
'Cause
That's
I think a
just
good
the way, like, no one, it is impossible to experience a movie, game, novel, whatever, we'll say, and take a review it, and not just take in your experiences with other things in that medium. Like, you just can't do that. Otherwise, you are not, if you are somehow able to forget all the things prior, then you're not reviewing it correctly, I feel like.
Yeah. It goes back to just like
everything's within its lane, everything has a scope, everything, nothing is comparable to the same degree to every single thing within its medium. I get that. But there are things this movie wants to be compared to, and at the end of the day, this is also, this is also a video game movie. And before watching the movie, before playing the video game itself, I would have thought it was just like in name only. I know the kingdom is the same, and having played 30 minutes of the game and reading the Wikipedia, it is vaguely a little bit more than that, in the very sense that there is a character named Farmer. There's an old man who was supposed to be Ron Perlman, and they have to stop the bad orc guys. But nothing about like a king or anything like that is a part of the video game. But we've also reviewed plenty of movies both in this season and in prior seasons with just Devin and I, where you take a concept like Angry Birds, for instance, that is so simple, there is not much there to work with for a story for a movie, so you need to expand it, and there are good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. I would say at the very least, this isn't a good thing way that they've done it, but they could have done a hell of a lot worse with how they would have expanded the bare bones story of Dungeon Siege. I will say that. Based off what I know, I guess.
They should have just made Beekeeper.
Yes, sure. All right.
There's not a lot of Jason Statham quotes. I was expecting more from you.
Oh, I had more. I just picked the kill me, because that's kind of what felt
As
like
the wife says.
No. I meant like throughout our arguments. I thought it was going to be part of your
I did think about it, like doing the rest of the show with the voice, but I knew that would probably get annoying. So
it would have got old.
But it would have been really funny when
you would have forgotten what you want to say because you would have been struggling to say a line. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've never seen Lord of the Rings, so your opinion is invalid. See, that turns into like a weird mother voice. It's tough, like you said, Ethan, trying to do it actually explain what you're doing. Yeah, right.
Let's move on to, I guess the accumulation of all of these wonderful conversations we have. And I just want to iterate to the audience, the three of us are best friends. We all appreciate and respect each other's opinions. I know it can seem like the number of times Dave and I are dismissing each other are like some weird animosity. It is not the case, at least not on my side. It is not the case.
We're just comfortable.
Exactly. We are just comfortable.
Even though deep down, David's like, I'm going to get him back.
Deep hate.
I'm going to be the beekeeper.
In the basement, just like punching a bag.
And the woman from Chun-Li falls out, and we're like, who the hell was this again?
You're right. Yeah.
So I just want to get that out of the way. Because we get all of these Twitter DMs. Just Devin, you're the one that manages the Twitter. Thousands of Twitter DMs that are like, "Hey, I think this David guy and this Ethan guy and this Devin guy."
There's one comment that said. There's one comment that said David should beekeeper Ethan.
And I haven't seen the movie, so I don't even know what that means. I don't even know. Let's move on to the culmination of this whole shebang. We got to give this bad boy a score and get David and potentially me some points.
Oh, that's right.
So
I'm still, man. We'll see how Professor Layton goes because I'm still low key regretting.
We'll get to that. Let's explain what we do here.
I don't regret it so fast.
Video game movie review that we do. We've done so far all of these movies in the season. Up until In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale, we've given them letter grades. This is the thing that we are ultimately fighting for. There are points on the line, however, these points do not invalidate our arguments. We are not disingenuous with our arguments for the sake of this game. This is a fun way to make these conversations have stakes. These are fun ways to have this whole kind of season lead to something that's a little bit more fun than if it wasn't there, right? So we have a bunch of letters. What do they mean?
I love
guess,
the alphabet.
I guess, you know what? The only way to go about it is to have someone explain it. And I think, David, the time is yours. This is your movie, after all. David, in 3 minutes or less, can you describe each of these tiers? You've heard Devin say it many a week.
I thought we were doing on the last one. I was not prepared.
You made me mad today, so I'm punishing you.
All right,
3
here we go.
minutes.
Okay, you got it.
Count me down, Dad.
3, 2, 1, go.
We rank these movies on a video game movie scale. So, you heard me say over and over again, we cannot be comparing these to Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. It's just not
Starting
fair.
over. Okay, go.
And so continuing on, because we didn't cut that, we
Don't tempt me.
start out with an S tier, and these are the top tier movies that not only hit it out of the park, but they are special sauce video game movies. Detective Pikachu, amazing movie. I haven't watched it. Prince of Persia, haven't watched it. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, haven't watched it. S tier.
Gran Turismo.
A tier. We know what A tier is. It's solid. There is very little. There's only going to be a little bit of nitpicking going on with A tier. It just doesn't have that special sauce to get it into S tier. Things like Rampage, Sonic the Hedgehog, Uncharted, Shush, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Super Mario Bros. But then we move down to B tier. Now, B tier, we're getting a little bit more bad, right? Like, it's good, it's solid, but there are some, like, serious gripes we have with B tier. Things like Dead or Alive. I've heard over and over that this was a B movie, fun, bad, but fun. So there was significant things that were bad, but also lots of fun. Haven't watched any of the B tier movies, except the ones on the season. C tier. This is the middle of the bell curve, folks. This is where most of our movies are going to accumulate. 68.7% of our movies statistically should accumulate here. One sigma on each side. Mathematically it does. Resident Evil, Degeneration, Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, Resident Evil, Retribution. They love to put Resident Evil here, folks. This is the Resident Evil tier. They're just they're just fine. They're just fine. D tier. We love to see D tiers. Just kidding, we don't. They're mostly bad. Assassin's Creed. I've heard it was a beautiful movie, but it's just boring. They don't know what is going on. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. Hitman. I have no idea what that movie is about. Warcraft. They don't even know what that movie's about, and they watched it. But they had redeeming qualities, folks. Maybe 1 or 2 redeeming qualities. The movies I mentioned, they were beautiful, but just boring as hell. E tier, this is trash movies. Sometimes movies get put here. Dead Trigger got put here. I wholeheartedly disagree with it. But these are just trash movies. Nearly no redeeming qualities. And then we get to F tier. F tier is Postal, it is Alone, and it is for fascists.
Okay. Thank you, David. I forgot to mention that E and F have been historically Uwe Boll's kind of ballpark there, but that's okay. I give you a 98 out of 100 on the grade score. Although it did kind of
you get an A.
It's harder than I thought.
It did kind of point A+ even. It did kind of point out something to me. You haven't seen any of these movies, so you don't know what you're talking about. All right.
To be fair, we now based off the as of Neko Atsumi House, we have outside of F have experienced every type of video game movie.
Interesting, yeah. No
so
F.
now there is no excuses.
Now we have to give this
now
an
you
F.
know
so
that scale. Yeah.
Okay. So these letter grades give points. It's very simple. S through F, 6 through 0. David's going to get whatever points that is that we unilaterally decide. Now, this movie was counterpicked by yours truly. What the counterpick means is we each picked a movie.
A bad choice.
On each other's list. So I picked a David movie, I picked a Devin movie. David picked an Ethan movie and a Devin movie. Devin picked an Ethan and a David movie. These are movies that we think, actually, no, I think that's a bad pick. I think those are bad movies. I'm going to guess that that's going to be a bad movie. I'm hoping it's bad because then I get some points out of it, right? So, depending on where we grade In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale, David will get some points, and I may get some points, or I may lose some points. I don't think I'm going to lose any points at the very least here.
Probably going to lose a couple.
Yeah, a couple, huh?
A couple being 2.
Well, statistically, that is what a couple means. So this is how it works.
That's not statistically.
I will say this, actually. I will argue one thing. So our letter grade, just because there's a lot of movies in the C tier, doesn't mean that, like, on average, all movies are in that. Like, they're the most in that. We could have a whole lot of really good movies, and when we come to subjective opinions,
that's what a bell curve is.
But this isn't a bell curve. This isn't a bell curve. It isn't. So
these movies should fall in a bell curve statistically. Period.
Incorrect.
Ethan, that is why we have the tiers within the tiers. We have the
sure.
It's a C.C.
David, you want an S? This could be F.S. I'm kidding. All right, David.
It's like the best F tier movie.
If this were to be F tier, I would say it would be the best F tier. But my opinion is not what's being stated right now. David, we talked a lot, you, Devin, and I, about this film.
Yeah.
Where do you think this movie deserves to be? In the name of the king.
Yeah, you gotta do it for the king.
You guys are going to disagree with me, but I'm going to state my case regardless.
Please.
He's like,
Yana, this is a C tier movie. This, in my opinion, was redeemed by the outstanding cast. This is a bad movie, but the cast does so well with such that they nearly turn shit to gold with the way they turn this shit tier.
Shit tier. He said shit tier.
This shit tier. Stop making me laugh. The acting in this, I feel, with the... I think I guess maybe I didn't bring this up, but I think the plot of this movie is fine. Even good. I think it's the writing that brings it down. And a few choices like the sort of daughter that bring it down. I think the plot overall is a standard revenge plot, a poor person who becomes king. It's good plot. It's good acting. And I think we are going to go amiss giving it any lower than a C.
Okay. I appreciate your truth. Devin, where do you think this goes?
I mean, going into this conversation, like I said, I went back in my notes. Usually I'll go back in my notes and like look it over and be like, oh yeah, I want to mention this, whatever. But I don't like write additional thoughts. And this is the first movie where I was like, I need to write additional thoughts because I want to hammer home. I have a thesis that this movie sucked. And I gave reasons. And we talked about a couple of the reasons. We didn't even talk about the music that Blind Guardian did, the power metal band from the 80s. And how I feel like I don't think their music is fine, but how it was used in the movie was awful. When he's freaking burying his son, it's like the music starts getting really tense for some reason. What the hell? Anyways, my thesis was this movie sucked, and I provided my 5 paragraphs if I actually wrote this out. If I'm doing I did a lot of history papers in college. I'm a history major. I did a lot of that, where you have your thesis, you have your supporting paragraphs, you have your evidence, and then you do a conclusion. And my conclusion is this. After reviewing the evidence, I have my thesis going in. Reviewing the evidence, speaking with you all. My opinion hasn't changed. If anything, it solidifies it that I am right, in that it is definitely, if anything, I thought about for a second. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought about for a second putting it in F tier because that's how much I disliked this movie, because I was ashamed for the actors. David mentioned the actors almost bringing out. No one could have saved this movie. You could put my favorite actors. You could put Arnold Schwarzenegger in there, and it wouldn't have changed anything for me, unfortunately. Like we're talking about one of the best action actors with Jason Statham in this movie. I've watched him in The Meg and The Meg 2, The Trench. And those
Meg
are silly
3.
movies.
Oh, I forgot
silly
this
Time
movies.
it's personal.
I saw him in The Beekeeper. I've seen him in Fast and Furious. And I know what he's capable of. And I know what Matthew Lillard is capable of. We've seen it in another video game movie. Recently, as of a couple weeks ago. All right? And we saw what he can do. We remember Scooby-Doo fondly, if I'm not mistaken.
That movie was a little perverted.
We remember it fondly, folks. And I
Ethan
go back
watched
to
a different one, a different version.
Well,
Scooby-Doo
when they all
on
swap
Pornhub?
bodies and Fred is in Daphne's body and he says, "I'm going to look at myself naked." That's a weird thing to say about your friend.
Shaq, that wasn't Matthew Lillard's character.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
I'm sorry. Please
All right,
continue.
back to the review.
back to the review. I go back to this. This movie was so bad, the floor was so low, that you could have got Shaq in here to try to touch the ceiling. The ceiling is too far. This fell down to the basement. Looking at these other movies, I'd rather watch Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I'd rather watch Blood Rain. Blood Rain was worse, but at least it was an hour and like 20 minutes, and I could move on with my day. This movie, like Ethan said, was something you maybe put on the TV and then you're not thinking. At best, okay? This movie's an E tier. I mean, it by definition for me. I didn't like one thing about it. I couldn't tell you one thing I liked about it, except for Jason Statham maybe did some cool action stunts, and I appreciate him that he's willing to do that for a shit movie. E tier. Sorry. I'm actually more upset compared with at least with Dead Trigger. I knew right away this movie was going to be bad. Or that movie was going to be bad. To be fair, I guess I did know that this movie was probably going to be bad too. But at least that one really quickly was like, oh boy, this one tried, and maybe it shouldn't.
Jesus. I don't know if I'd go that far. Listen, I'm not going to belabor the point. You know what I'm going to say. This movie is uninspired, boring, and lazy. This is an E-tier film. That's it.
I would have put an F if it was more racist.
I wouldn't have put it in an F because I don't find this movie offensive. Yeah, no. And again, like, this is better than Blood Rain,
Yeah.
but it's still in the E tier. I mean, we
I
didn't really
think
talk
they're-
about the fact that the only two black actors in the movie are like in subservient type of roles in a sense, you know. But
Well, yeah,
I don't
was
think
gonna say
that really goes.
There's Uwe Boll. I mean, I haven't seen Postal, so I don't. I
Who
mean,
knows?
I'm trusting
You
your
might watch
guys'
Postal and be like, I don't know what Ethan
opinion
and David
on
are
it.
talking about. This movie's fine. You could.
I'm starting to think that based on. No, I'm just kidding.
Go
but
for
I
it,
think
man.
I think there are serious, maybe moral issues with this movie, but at the same time, this is 2008. We were in 8th grade. I think this is not that much different, sadly, than a lot of
Transformers?
maybe problematic things.
Oh,
in
you say
this
problematic.
generation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Transformers is a better movie than this, despite the fact that Transformers ain't that good. This is technically based off toys, which are what video games are also, you know, in a sense. I guess we have to watch all the Transformers movies now.
So
All right,
I guess
well,
it averages out and it's D tier.
that's the conversation the three of us need to have here because we have a gap. Two of us are saying E tier, and one of us is earnestly saying C tier. I don't know how we do this. I mean,
The definition to D tier is there's more bad than good. I haven't said anything to suggest that. I don't think, Ethan, you've said anything that suggests that. And in the past, we've also have just done majority wins, I think, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I'm
I
willing
mean,
to have the convo, but I'm kind of set.
I mean,
I think it'll be a quick. I mean, I've said my piece, right? Like if you guys don't agree with me at this point, it doesn't really matter. I think personally, I think the acting lifts this much higher.
I just disagree so hard on that. I
You
almost
think
say
these are
what
all
acting.
bad actors?
I think the acting itself
Clip
is
it.
bad.
Clip it. Sending it to Jason Statham.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I said the acting was. By the way, I was the median. I said the acting was good. They tried. I know they tried, but
Yeah.
the production value of everything around them.
We
like I
said our
said-
piece already. We can't just keep
I know.
going on this. I'm sorry.
I'm just
No, I
saying.
know. That's
I
what I'm
wanna-
saying.
I'm just saying on the record. I didn't say the acting.
Fair
was
enough.
bad.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
um,
Okay. Well, I guess we
Yeah.
just have to just meet somewhere where we honestly think it is, and that's F. I guess. So I guess we're gonna put it in F. No, I mean, Devin says we used to do majority rules. If that's the case, I guess it is E tier.
I'm just trying to think. I think the example of that was like Gran
I guess-
Turismo was
So-
Oh right, because you were both S and I was, I think,
Yeah.
B into maybe
A.
A. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you were A, but
Was I A?
yeah.
So I guess I
guess
don't remember if it's been this far of a gap. I mean, granted,
It's
it'd be
not.
different
It's
if you
definitely
said-
not.
There's such an age gap between.
Well,
us.
it might have been for Dead Trigger. I might have said C for Dead Trigger as well. I don't remember what I
I
said.
think
but
I said I was between E and D on Dead Trigger, if I remember correctly.
I think I
so-
was between C and D maybe. So this I think probably is the largest. I mean, I guess the only thing I'll say is like
Or did we meet in the
the
middle on Max Payne?
we.
I don't know. I think we all kind of were
I don't
like.
remember.
I think David wanted it B, and I think you and I both said C. Because I don't think I.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe I said it was a D, but
I thought
C
maybe you
felt
said it was
right
a
to
D,
me.
Then honestly, so maybe it was a
maybe
lower
one of those
C.
things where it's like I could do, because I think
Well-
for every single one of these, I'm like, I waffle between one and one that's higher or one that's lower. Except for this one, I'm like, this is definitively E for me.
Can I make one last argument?
Go for
Go
it.
for it.
King.
You have your right.
The few D tier movies that we have had, there have only been one redeeming quality. Mortal Kombat, Legends, Battle of the Realms. The fighting was good. They were good fight scenes. The rest of the movie was confusing. I understand Devin liked it a little bit more because he knew the lore, but without the lore, it was just bad storytelling. Super Mario Bros. I mean, I said it was E, so I think there was arguments made, if I remember correctly, for maybe it being cute. I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me. I don't remember redeeming quality for Super Mario Bros. And then what was the last one? Fatal Fury, Legend of the Hungry Wolf. I mean, that was also a horribly boring movie. And again, the one thing that was good was it had good fight scenes. So in this movie, I will make my argument that the one thing that was good, it had good actors, and those actors acted well.
So you think
Period.
this is a D tier?
It was. I think this is D tier. It had one redeeming quality. It did not have zero redeeming qualities, which is the E tier.
Okay. I believe you.
Well, I was gonna say
I
with
don't
D,
think
I
it has
mean,
any redeeming qualities. Personally. That's why I said E, but
I don't think the acting was great, but I also think it was what they were given. Like I said, it put Shaq in a
But if it's what they're giving,
And they-
you're critiquing the.
D tier.
Writing.
Technically, we've gone off the
critiquing
record
the
saying there's-
results.
was more bad than good. Was D tier, just vaguely, is more bad than good. Which obviously that good could be one thing. Like it's hard to weight that.
I'm
It
just
has to be
going off
like-
of what we have here for
Right.
our D tiers.
And yeah, maybe Mortal Kombat should be lower. I think if you had another you or Ethan in there, I think it would have been lower. But like I definitely brought it up. I mean, I could be nice and just say, yeah, fuck it, let's do D, but it's a fucking low D, a very low D.
I mean,
I
think
do kind of
Ethan
feel
is
bad.
being disingenuous, saying
that's
that
not
it was
fair.
bad. You're saying it was bad acting from Jason Statham?
Yes, dude, yes.
How? Where was the bad acting?
Where
Can
was
you
the
give
acting?
Can you give examples? Because like I just am not understanding
Flat
where the
monotone
bad acting
delivery
is
on
coming.
everything he does.
That's kind of his
That's
shtick,
not
though.
true. That's
Dude, it
not
is.
true.
100%.
Come on. That
He has been in.
The
he has
acting
done
in
so
here-
much better in so many other movies, man.
it's because of the writing. It is not bad
because of
acting.
how
It's
he does
bad
it.
writing. No, come on.
I disagree.
Okay, if you take Jason Statham out, okay, let's say you break even
The rest
on
of the
that.
actors also. The King had so many good.
I'm with David where I
moments.
think they tried the best with what they got, and I don't. I mean,
Well,
this
yeah, I
goes
don't think
into-
anyone decided to do a bad job. They just did a bad job.
But that's what you're saying is they did.
I think it was more the
yeah,
production.
they did a bad job. They didn't
I think it's the
try.
production making it worse. Because most of the movie felt like if you went to like a play and the lighting isn't just keeps you. It felt very much like a play set, like in the sense of like I'm saying like a school play or something. And yeah, it's hard to get into it when you see the wood floor and then the students putting up the props and like the setting was awful. If the setting is awful, I think it does hurt the actors no matter how good they try. Even with good dialogue, even a setting can take you out of it. I think I stand by the fact that this is very bad production and poorly made, and that is what it's
agree.
really hard. And that's what goes back to my Shaq comment. The floor was so low. You can bring in Shaq to try to touch the ceiling, and
I
the
was
ceiling's
wondering
still too
where
damn
the
high.
Shaq thing. Okay, I see.
Yeah, that was my like analogy where it's like
I see.
Jason Statham could have been 10 feet tall. The floor was 20 feet deep. It was already set up to fail. And in a way, I think in the end that just to me, I don't really give a shit about the actors at that point. If everything else is set up to fail, you can bring in, like I said, I can bring in one of my favorite actors, Arnold Schwarzenegger, prime Arnold Schwarzenegger, 1986 Arnold Schwarzenegger from Predator, put him in this movie.
Yeah.
And I probably would have been like, wow, it's so awkward. I think that's what makes the movie awkward is because it's poorly made. So I'm going to defend David on that one. I'm not going to say it was great, but I think it's again, they are given poor everything and their surrounding, the sets that they're on, the everything is so bad that it's you hyper focus on it too, and then you're just trying to find maybe another reason to hate it. But it's just like at the end of the day, I don't know. I think we could have put almost anybody in this. Al Pacino could have put fucking in this movie, and I don't think it would have. We saw it with Blood Rain. Blood Rain was a good example where Meatloaf felt like the best actor because at least his set was him in a fucking bed with naked women, and it felt stupid enough that it worked. You know what I mean? Sure. When the sets are bad, it doesn't really matter. I think to a certain degree. I look at production as a big thing because if a production is bad and you don't know how to do it, even with a small budget or a big budget, even that will tank your film at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. Production will fail you, and direction will fail you. And I that's how a lot of times. That's why I put a lot into acting, but. And acting can break a movie for you, but at the same time, on the other side of the coin, production, direction will completely tank your film. Doesn't matter who's in it, and this is a perfect example in my head. At the end of the day, though, I don't know. I want to be nice and give David D, but
I'm looking at Dead Trigger, where it was the same level of bad writing and bad production as this, and it was bad actors, and that was an E. So I feel like it's either above Dead Trigger in a high E, or in my opinion, it's a D. But
for that comparison, my opinions on that, I think Dead Trigger had worse sets than this, because I think, if I recall, maybe I'm wrong here, Dead Trigger also had less of a budget, regardless of whether or not we weigh that as much. You do what you can with what you have. I would say they're both still E, even though I don't like Dead Trigger. I don't want to say as much as I like this, because I don't like this movie. I would say this is better than Dead Trigger, but not enough to bring it out of E tier for me personally. But again, taking a step back through all this, David, I do understand wholeheartedly what you're saying and arguing for. I get it.
Yeah.
I just fundamentally disagree on all that stuff.
Yeah. I think we're just not going to agree on, if you wholeheartedly think that it was bad acting, then if I thought it was bad acting, 100% this is E. It's just, I don't know. I think that's, maybe I think you guys maybe have reviewed more movies at this point, and you have maybe a more critic hat on. I'm gonna be interested to see what the IMDb says. I feel like I'm
Rotten
more
Tomatoes,
of the
yeah.
average Rotten Tomatoes. I feel like the average audience is probably like, yeah, it's bad, but it's not the worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, that's like E tier, right? It's like
E tier to me is
like,
bad. So I feel like if
it's just like purely
Weren't
bad.
we also surprised at how low the audience was with Dante's Inferno, though? Where we were like, hey, this wasn't that bad. This was a pretty okay movie.
And
like,
to be
they're
fair,
like, this is
I
terrible.
think
Wasn't
think
it? There
we
was a
were
movie like that?
or
I
like
don't think so.
and
Maybe.
to be fair with Dead Trigger, that was also rated really low.
Yeah,
just
that
in
was.
comparison. But I don't know. I only wanted to defend David because I don't want to like I get where he's coming from, and I actually support him in the argument. I just don't think the argument is strong enough to get it into D tier, where I think D tier is majority bad, and there could be a good. And like I said, that what is good is very weighted. I think in like that it could be one thing to really like.
Right,
get you
we're
out of that,
arguing over subjective, and we're trying to make an objective, definitive
Yeah.
statement about it. So like it's obviously just.
So I
there's
get where David's coming
compromises and
from,
all
where
that stuff,
where for
yeah.
David, like you're saying that
Yeah.
like that 40% that's good maybe is the acting, and maybe that is enough for you to be like, yes, I
don't have like the baggage of Postal, right? Like I know, I understand. Like
This is better than Postal.
like no, I know, but
straight
like
up better
there
than
is
Postal.
there is a baggage that comes with knowing this person also produced this and what else he's produced, right? So like,
we have
that
plenty more to
naturally-
get through, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
Like
like,
just
it
the thing,
just
I think that
naturally-
is still valid though. You need that because I
know, but
where
that's
did
what
people
I'm
come from
saying.
and where did they go? You know,
No, I'm saying is
exactly.
what you're saying is what I'm agreeing with. Is that this is rated lower because we know intentions, and maybe this could be rated higher, but at the same time, you guys are saying, well, it's actually lower because of these past experiences with this director.
I mean, I don't even put.
And
that
I remember
into
we
this
were
person.
blindsided by it with Blood Rain. We're like, oh wow, like we like the concept. I played a little bit of one of the Blood Rain games, and it was like, all right, but like cool.
And then
We're like,
Postal was the one
because it
where,
had
like, what the
Michelle
fuck?
Rodriguez in it, and we were like, sweet. It's like almost like the Chronicles of Diesel extended family universe of films we're going to be watching.
we watched
that movie. We're like, holy shit, this was bad. This was so bad.
It was
And then
after
we're like,
Resident
oh my
Evil
God.
too, where we're like, she was in that. Yeah, it did feel like
We had
watching.
this plan to watch Halloween or scary-ish video game movies like in the months of October, and most of them are made by him, and we scrapped the plans because we're like, do we want to watch these now? I don't know. Through all that, though, David, you made one very salient point. I'm not going to be mean and say it was the best point you've ever made, but jokingly, I will say it was the best point you've ever made. You said, you know what, Devin and Ethan, you've seen more of these, so maybe you have more of a critic hat, and you then, by comparison, have stated that you don't have that. We're going to change that, buddy, because I think sometime in the future, we're going to be rewatching some of the movies we've already reviewed on this channel, not from this season, and you're going to be a part of it. Maybe folks will see that one day soon. When I say soon, I mean within a year or so, and maybe they won't. I don't know. So we're gonna still to change that, because while I do value and appreciate the fact that we have at least one person out of the three of us that is coming from it from a not the exact same perspective as the two, I guess, more traditional hosts of this podcast, I do think it is important that some of the ones that we always refer to, and when Devin does his tier ranking explanations that you then did a very fine job with, David. Even then you joke, oh, they say about this, but I haven't seen it. I think it is important then you probably do see some of these movies then to kind of get where maybe Devin and I are coming from on some of this stuff. But at the same time, I don't think that makes how the three of us have approached today's episode invalid, to be fair.
No, it's
but
just
the more context
extra baggage.
makes you better. That's it. The more you learn, the more you grow. You gotta throw out the garbage in the bags in order to clean your room. That's what I've been told.
Yeah.
I've never done it, though. So, I guess we need to put this on a definitive bow. Is this an E tier?
I'll say
I think
for
we're
David.
going majority, unless
I'll just say this: I think it's E. I think we gotta stick with E. I think when we really can't find a battleground, a middle ground, and we're if we really are dead set on it, we have to. I think the only can work for the sake of moving on is we got to do majority.
If it was a situation where it was C, D, and E, then we would meet in the middle, I would imagine, and go with D.
Or we talk about it and be like, okay,
SAD.
actually, I think. But to give David we don't have we joke about the tears in the tears, and we know we don't really record it that way. But I'll always remember. I'll give David the little bit with the acting. I'll move it up. I was bottom E. I'll move it up to I'm
glad I'm convinced
an E point B. All right.
Okay.
And that's me being a little bit.
Fair.
That's pretty good.
By my own definitions, this cannot be E point E because I think there are E movies that are worse than this, but it's still E nonetheless. So, okay. This being an E tier means a couple things. Let me first get this.
By the way, I did try to look up, does Jason Statham or any of the actors ever mention this movie to me?
We'll get into it. I did look up what Jason Statham had to say about this movie and did not find anything.
Me neither.
He has said he's been in a lot of bad movies, and he's stated the movies he thinks are not bad that he's been in. This was not mentioned. So this being an E tier means David gets 1 point, bringing his total so far before this decimal point action to 18.04. This being my counter pick means I get 3 points out of it.
Oh boy.
See, I'm actually starting to sweat low key, honestly.
You're going to win, Devin. Just don't stop hamming it up. You can't be the underdog that's actually the winner in everything, all right? You have to actually be a little bit humble and be like, yeah, I'm winning right now.
No, I mean, look at the math, though, because you're about to get 3.
You have one more movie to do.
Super Mario Bros.
But that movie could be E. Bayonetta could be an E. And then all of a sudden, I'm only have a 3-point lead, and then you get an A on Persona, and then I can get another E, and then you win.
It's possible, I understand, but it's not likely.
It's not likely, yes.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. If they try to do some bullshit,
so as of right now, before we get into decimal point stuff, I have 19.11 and David has 18.04. But David is going to be earning potentially some decimal points. Last movie we reviewed had no decimal points awarded because it did not have, the thing Devin's going to talk about. I'm going to take it away, Mr. Devin.
Right. So to add a little fun element to this, and also to kind of, see how our perspective is in comparison to the, I guess, other average moviegoer, or at least, to a certain degree, someone who's willing to put enough time into writing a review, even if it's just hitting some stars or doing a percentage, which is what we're doing. We do a tier system. Other people, be like, out of 5, I give this movie a 3 or whatever, right? We're going to use the closest source we have to that to a general audience, which is Rotten Tomatoes. A lot of people do go on this site, right, to maybe before they see a movie to be like, what does the critic score say, or what does the audience score to say? Sometimes you see movies with low critic scores, but then the audience loves it, or vice versa. We're going to use the audience score, like I said, because it's a better resemblance. We're not trying to be movie critics necessarily. David called me a critic earlier, and I'm like, hell yeah, brother.
You guys
but no, we're gonna use the general audience score, which will be if you go on the website on a random movie. It's the one on the right. We're going to use whatever that percentage is and add that as a decimal. We'll move the decimal point over. So let's say it's an 84. It gets the decimal moves over, and it's a 0.84 would be added to his total. That's why you have these weird decimals, and it's weirdly enough really close on just the decimal front. You have 0.11, 0.04, and 0.02. So
sure,
these points can add up, and all of a sudden you get that one extra up. That's how Ethan won the first one.
Less than a point.
Granted, he did miss out on one because one movie didn't have any, so it might have not been as close. But
I missed out on one again. So.
I think he missed out on 2 this season.
Yeah, I think so. I think Mario
that's how the draft goes sometimes. Is maybe draft for the higher thing, but sometimes it's good to be like get a solid movie with a decent audience score, and then that's where the strategy comes in. But yes, this one. Hold on, I got to enable ads. It's weird. I don't get ads on ones that don't have any scores. They're like, no one's looking at this page.
Oh, so there is a score.
There is a score.
I was nervous there was not going to be.
Like I said, there is the user score, which is the one on the right. I'll say there's 100 100,000 ratings. This is probably our most rated
Holy
movie.
shit.
Wow.
So we're really getting. David asked, like, I don't want to know what the other people think, you know.
I'm
And
very
compared to other
interested.
movies, where, you know, we have like 5 ratings for some of these, we're like, hey, we count it. Yeah, this one has a score, and, you know, just for shits and giggles, I've been kind of asking Ethan and David to guess, and there's no score to this, but it's fun. Give me your score, Ethan.
I'm gonna be mean here and say 12.
Okay, we got 12.
Damn.
David.
My score immediately that came to mind was 47.
47.
Agent 47, Hitman. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Hitman movie.
Well, I'll say this:
E-rank.
the critic score with 51 reviews, just to add some intensity to this,
Yeah, okay.
was 4
4 out of 5.
4 out of 100.
out of 100.
Okay.
With one critic saying, "Don't go for the campy laughs. There are none."
Okay.
Then for the audience score out of 100,000 reviews, folks. I don't know who was closer, but it's really close because it's 22. It's right in the middle of that.
Oh, I think
Okay.
David was probably... No, I was 10 away.
47. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
never mind. I can't do
closer.
math. I've never been good at that shit. 22%. So you get 0.22 added to that. That could come in
It
handy.
could.
Hey,
later.
that's 0.22 more than what I got last episode from my movie, so things add up. Okay,
And this is I'm gonna read some of the audience reviews, which is a lot of
I'll just
different
say
languages
before you get to that, David's now total score is 18.26. So less than a point away from me. Could definitely
But you
easily come
have
back.
both your counter picks already sunk.
And you still have one
And I
ready
still
to
have
go.
one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, David still has a shot.
And
at
Devin
still
still has
beating it.
one
That
as
E
well,
does hurt.
so-
That E does. Those 2 E's really hurt. If he had like even D's on those, this game would be.
David, why don't you
Little
just
bit more
pick
dicey.
Tetris and Five Nights at Freddy's?
I should have.
I'm gonna
I
do
should've
like a
picked Five Nights.
Once, I think I've said it before, but once we have all the rankings
Yeah.
done, I'm gonna do like a redraft to like who, you know,
Okay.
not doing who went first, but just like what would be like the best board you could possibly get, knowing everything. But here's some audience reviews that we've been adding to this little segment here, which I
Yeah,
like.
I'm interested.
James, this was from last March 2023.
Whoa.
He gave it a 0.5 out of 5. And he said, what did he say here? The movie is atrocious. Uwe Boll lives up to his infamous reputation of being a worse movie director than the average moviegoer. Damn. At first, the writing seems
that's
bad,
mean.
but if you look carefully, the writing is undermined by bad directing and bad editing. It is impossible to describe this without seeing it unfold on screen. Long story short, this movie is absolutely amazing when the fight scene director takes over, and even worth the watch just for the fight choreography. It's a little bit more higher on
Seems
the
like
action.
seems like a D to me. That's
He
for
gave it
deep
half a
qualities.
star though, so I don't know if he's.
Yeah, but he doesn't
outranking-
know he doesn't know how to rank things.
I'm
Exactly.
trying to find like a.
It
if
has
there's a good
redeeming
review.
qualities. It's a D.
Oh, someone. This
D
one's
for
closest one.
redeeming.
I think this is the closest one to David right here. His name is Steve. He did a review.
I bet he also
last
fought
September.
for the Confederacy. Sorry. go on.
If you do
Just
not
like
have
Ethan.
expectations, it is a passable movie. Which I think was what David's whole argument was. If
Yes.
you don't have any expectations, it's a
Yes.
passable movie.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Reasonable person. Steve is my guy.
But a lot
Mark
of
them
these
down.
are
Find that
twos,
user account.
ones.
Find that user account and just bookmark it because we're gonna be checking to see if you reviewed any of these other movies. This is David's guy right there. We're gonna do that later. If
me
if any
see.
of these
Checkmark
other
Steve.
movies.
He's a raider actually.
Whoa.
He's rated Transformers 1 as of recently, Wild Robot,
And what does that
Geostorm.
compare?
That movie looked
How does that
cute.
compare?
He reviewed Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Ooh. He
How does
gave
it compare?
Transformers 1 5 stars. He gave Geostorm 3.
Out
Wild
of
Robot
5?
5 stars. 5 out of 5 is all 5 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
He gave Prey a 4 out of 5. Are you kidding me? And then he gave Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I think this is actually fair. 4 out of 5. I'm just a general movie scale right here.
I haven't seen the new Transformers, but
And what did he give
I-
this movie?
I think
Out of
it was
5?
I think it was a 3. Yeah, he gave it 3.
Really?
Okay, so only
And he
one
watches some TV
star.
shows.
So you're saying we dropped 4 ranks off of 1 star?
By some random dude? Yes.
This is crazy.
Wow.
He gave Aliens 4.
All
He
right.
gave Gemini Man. Remember that Will Smith movie from like 2019? They had a bunch of trailers. I feel like every time I went to the theater. 3. He gave the original Sonic the Hedgehog 3.5. He gave The Dark Knight a 5, of course. Godzilla vs.
Oh
Kong
my
a
God.
4.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Steve
Quiet
sucks.
Place.
He's got like milk toast tastes. All right.
Venom a 4. Oh,
That's
actually,
David's movie right there. Maybe
makes
this
you
is
feel
David's
any
guy.
better.
Why is Venom? I think I've watched it once. Why is this
It's
my
got your
movie?
guy in it. It's got your guy Venom. in it.
Eminem?
Well, him too, actually. Yeah.
It is a very David kind of movie to me. Low-key.
Why is it a
Venom.
movie?
My name
What's funny is though
Venom.
during our recording, my friends here, they're like, "Hey, we want to be good friends to you guys, and as good friends, we'd highly recommend to never see the third Venom movie." They said.
Oh
So I
my
just
God.
thought while
I didn't
we were
see the second
destroying
one
this,
either.
while we were destroying this movie, they were like,
I
just
didn't
got
know
another.
there was 3.
I got a text about
Yeah,
how
this is
bad
the
that
third
movie
one.
is, and I'm like, "You guys should watch In the Name of the King next."
Man, there are 2 more of these movies, David.
Oh,
Can you believe that?
Here's the one. Here's one to solidify it all.
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, 5 stars.
Okay.
He's a solid guy. He knows what he likes, and we all like the same thing he likes. So, all right.
Alien a 4 out of 5. Prometheus a 4.
Hey,
I've heard Prometheus is 2 out of 5, but that's just, average Joes,
I'm
not
trying to find
critics.
his most controversial.
all right,
one.
we got to move on. We got to wrap this
All
up.
right,
and
let's
say
move
goodbye.
on. I'm interested to see
So-
what this
what,
this
what
game
could
show
possibly
is.
be next? Like, I mean, we've done
Yeah.
the thing. It's been almost 2.5 hours, and we all had fun here.
Instead
so
of
I wanna
watching the
say-
movie,
Usually-
watch a review of it.
Yeah. An hour into this, we'll be
Usually
saying
these
the
only
same thing
take
I
one.
said an hour into the movie, where I'm like, holy fuck, there's an hour left. God damn it, kill me. Okay, well, thank you, David.
They're watching
Thank
this
you,
while they're
Devin.
driving trucks.
Probably. We watched a very movie, and I'm glad we watched this movie. It is certainly one of the movies of all time. Next movie we are going to be watching is an animated film titled Bayonetta, Bloody Fate.
Bring me
I'm
home. Bayonetta, give me
curious
an
to
A
see.
right here. Lock this shit up. Let's end it.
I have
gonna
no
be F.
idea. It could be, But, we'll just have to see that for another day. But for now, I think it's time for everyone's new favorite game show, Statham Says.
I love this show. It's like
Yes,
my
that's
favorite.
right. I went around and I surveyed several hundreds Jason Stathams for their opinions on several things. And I've gotten some quotes from you.
Got some quotes from
For
me.
you. So here's how this works. The 2 of our buds here, Devin and David, will be competing for a platinum trophy. Currently, Devin has 13 platinum trophies, and David, much reflecting his opinions on the movies we review, is down only to 3 platinum trophies.
The
winner
king
of this
and the paupers.
will be sure Popper will
We
be
love an
winning.
underdog
The
story.
winner of
Devin's
this will
such
be
an
winning
underdog.
another platinum trophy. I do not know if it's possible for David to win at this point anymore. But we're gonna keep doing
It
this
is when the
because who
DM's
knows?
on my side.
And I've been trying to be on your side this entire time. I can't rig things for you, but I root for you. All right, I love a good
No,
underdog
seemed
story.
rigged last game.
But this, I mean,
I
love your
answered
cat
truthfully, and I got punished.
love your cat more. That was what the whole thing was about. Love your cat more. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's how this is going to work. I got 6 questions plus a tiebreaker. Okay. The questions will be, what does Jason Statham think about blank topic? I will read off 3 quotes. 2 of them are real quotes he said, and one of them is something I made up. You're supposed to suss out the fake quote, the lie, the untrue
lie.
statement. Sound understandable?
All the quotes
This is
are
how
just
I
gonna
normally
be,
play.
That's right.
about beekeeping. It's just gonna be like, the quotes can be, "I'm a beekeeper. I'm the
Now,
beekeeper."
I did try to find a lot of interviews that were from around the time this movie came out.
Okay.
So some of that stuff is from that era. Excuse me. As is tradition with this sort of multiple choice style thing, the 2 of you are going to buzz in by saying your own name. So
We can steal.
if the person gets it wrong, the other person gets a chance to steal.
Okay.
Every correct answer will give you 5 points. All right. So, We good? We make sense? We good?
I'm ready.
Okay, Devin is
Give
ready.
me a fast car.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Give me a knife.
All right. So,
Where's Shaw?
our first
You
question...
killed my wife.
We're getting close. Our first question is simply this. What does Jason Statham have to say about racing cars? Your 3 quotes are this. A, I've been go-karting a few times with friends. B, I watch Formula 1 racing and I go to the 24-hour Le Mans race. C, I've raced once down a drag strip and lost.
Devin.
David.
Devin?
This one's tough. I'm picking the lie, correct? Right?
You are picking the lie. There are 2 truths and a lie.
The B one I'm kind of not believing, but the A one just stuck out a little bit too much to me. He doesn't seem like a go-kart kind of guy. I don't know. Like, this is like I can't visualize that. And then the C one sounds much more truthful to me, or just sounds like something he would say. I'm gonna go A.
Okay. Devin says A.
Bring it home.
Devin, the first person to answer on this game show, is answered incorrectly. It is not A.
Fuck.
That was a classic Jason Statham line.
David,
He's the
you
tough
have
guy,
the
and he-
chance to steal.
I play ping pong. I go go-karting. It's a classic Jason. Can't believe you got that one wrong. It's B. Final answer.
Okay. David says B. David, that answer for this first question is also incorrect.
Oh my god.
The
One
lie
I was
is
like, oh, that's definitely.
I
real.
know.
the lie is the statement. I've raced once down a drag strip and lost.
Bro was in
Okay.
like the black market and stuff, and he just
Yeah.
like didn't drag race. That's just doesn't make any sense to me.
Sad.
Let me see here. real
Fucking
quick.
sad.
Everything is sad when you're British
And beekeeping.
and beekeeping. That's true.
And my
Where's
wife
the
is
med-
dead.
We need to find the
On-
shark.
On to question number 2. Again,
My son.
you buzzing by saying your own name. What does Jason Statham have to say about his martial arts training? Statement A. I do a lot of grappling now, and the movie martial arts, if you'd like. Statement B. Jet Li taught me all sorts of stuff in the films we've been in, but I won't get into it. Statement C. I used to do a lot of kickboxing. My dad used to box.
Devin.
Devin.
Jet Li? I don't know. I'm just that's something's funky about that one, Ethan. I'm gonna say B. Come the beekeeper.
Okay. Devin is saying B. Devin thinks that the lie in that statement is Jet Li taught me all sorts of stuff in the films we've been in, but I won't get into it. Devin, you got that correct.
Nice.
Devin gets 5 points
I
for
had
that
a
one.
feeling that was.
He has
Why
been
would he
in,
not get into it? That's like so.
Yeah.
he has been in 2
wait.
movies with Jet Li.
Okay.
At the very least, prior to the interviews I had read.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like, but I'm not going to get into it. It's very Ethanism.
Fair.
Ethan coded.
Ethan coded. You also thought
Ethan
that
coded,
like
yeah.
the last one was very Ethan coded, but it was just a straight up personality.
I
test
didn't
to see
say
how
that.
well you are with your quest.
I didn't say it was Ethan.
Both of you said that. Both of you said that.
I didn't
okay.
say it was Ethan coded. Last
Question
time.
number 3.
Where's
Question number
Toretto?
3. It is simply. Oops. Shit. Sorry.
Don't be
Here comes
sorry.
the
Be
Ethan
better.
coded.
Then that's the question. No. Question number 3. What does Jason Statham have to say about his fears? Statement A. No, I don't have any phobia. No. Statement B. For me, it's sharks. I don't know if I could stand being around all those big sharks. Statement C. I get anxiety about things, but when you get it, you can reason with it.
Devin.
David.
Why'd you- that was like a second after it. David's like David. On my end. That was so funny.
To me, it's the same exact time.
For me, it
was
was.
like a-
I don't know
Devin
why
said
I
Devin.
have such
I
a
said
delay.
Devin. Then David said David without any overlap. So,
I'll have to watch.
To
it in the
me,
pod.
Devin and I were at the exact same time, and Ethan was a
Wow.
second after.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say A. I think the anxiety one's truthful, and the B one's a little. That one sounds a little like fishy, no pun intended. With the,
Oh, 'cause of the shark?
I feel like it's
because
C.
of the Meg, But I could also see him saying that maybe as a joke, like maybe the context is a joke. So I'm gonna go A is the lie.
That's what it is.
I almost called you David. Devin's statement of A, no, I don't have any phobia, no. He says that is the lie. Devin, that is incorrect. David, you have a chance to steal.
C.
David says C. I get anxiety about things,
crank.
but when you get it, you can reason with it. David, that answer is also incorrect.
Oh my God.
It was the shark thing.
God,
That was the lie.
That was too. Where's the
Yeah,
shark?
that's you did a good job with that one.
We need to
Thank
kill
you.
the Meg.
I guess you don't know Ethan codes all the time, huh?
Well, historically, I do.
There's 3 Megs in the sea.
Okay. Not to continuously be mean to David, but looking at your
Jack
trophy count, I'd
Sparrow.
say historically you don't know Ethan codes.
No, you're misunderstanding because most of the time when Devin gets it right, after he says it, I agree with him.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Hey,
Before
when
you
you're right,
say
you're right.
whether it's the right answer.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So,
You're right, you're right. After the answer is
go back to
revealed,
the
you
clips,
get
it.
ref.
David, you just have to be quicker. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm not arguing with you. You win fair and square.
Do you wanna argue
He's
right now?
questioning my Ethan coded radar, and he's incorrect.
Oh, it's a radar, huh? So you have to find
Yeah.
it? You have to search around you?
It's
Okay.
constantly pinging.
All right. On to
Ethan.
question
Ethan.
Ethan,
On-
it just says Ethan at first.
on to question 4. So we were halfway through. Still anybody's game. Question number 4. What does Jason Statham have to say
Statham.
about diving at the Olympics? Statement A. I went from diving at real competitions to swimming away from a fake shark. Statement B. It's a bit of a sore point that I never got into the Olympics. Statement C. I started too late. It probably wasn't my thing. I should have done a different sport.
This one's tough. David.
All right, David.
I have.
I should have just said Devin anyway.
Yeah, there. I have the tiniest gut feeling about B,
Okay.
but I
beekeeper,
don't know. B for beekeeper.
Do you want me to read
I
them
don't
all
know,
off again, or
these-
do you have them all in your head?
No, I'm gonna go with my gut, which has failed me lots of times in the past. B.
Okay. David says the statement, it's a bit of a sore point that I never got to the Olympics, is the lie. David, the answer is wrong. Devin, you have a chance to steal.
Thanks for eliminating one of them. That was my strat.
Got it.
So you did B for beekeeper. Could go C for crank, and you could go A for a dungeon siege.
What?
Is
For Crank?
that the movie?
What is
that he's in?
Crank?
He's in a movie. called
Oh,
Crank, yeah.
I've never.
Yeah. Now I'm like, I was
Okay.
thinking,
I've
wow,
never
David
heard of it.
gaslit me there into like not remembering.
He's been doing that a lot this episode.
I've never
Indirect-
heard of it, so
He's been
to me
gaslighting
that's
you all
like such a
episode,
random.
gassing me up. I don't know, man. C? When in doubt, guess C.
Devin says C. That statement
feel like it
was,
was one of
I
the
started
Olympics
too late. It probably wasn't my thing. I should have done a different sport. Devin, that answer is also incorrect.
Oh my.
Oh wow! What
It was the
A?
shark thing again!
Yeah, well, you just
Oh
did the
my
shark thing.
God.
I guess Ethan coded. Ain't
Wow.
something you're proficient in, huh?
Who wrote these? Who did you pay to write these? It's not you. These are not Ethan.
Oh, I don't have the
coded.
money to pay anyone else. Sorry.
Oh.
It is still anybody's
You're-
game
you're
because
not
there are
paying
2
people fairly?
questions left. All right, our penultimate question. Hey, that's the thing I always say.
This is
Do your
brutal.
thing with the editing. Devin. All right, our penultimate question.
What?
Question number 5.
We guessed them.
What does Jason Statham have to say about comedies? Statement A. Statement A. People are always nagging me about doing a comedy like I'm fucking Vin Diesel. Statement B. They're either brilliant or they're fucking terrible. Statement C. At least in making an action film, there's always going to be someone who wants to see a car chase.
Devin.
Devin.
I'm going A. I don't think he would say that about Vin Diesel.
Okay. Devin says the statement is A. That statement is... People are always nagging me about doing a comedy like I'm fucking Vin Diesel. Devin, Then answer is correct.
Damn.
Like, he wouldn't do that to us.
I was thinking it was B. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Is that it?
Devin, you won. I want to ask the last question anyway for fun.
I didn't remember how many questions there were. I know you said penultimate, but I'm like, maybe he misspoke.
No. There's usually 6, but I know last time it was 4 and 4, which was 8.
Last one counts for 10 now.
Hey, you guys need to say that up front if you want to agree with that. I can't just do that now.
No.
There was a tiebreaker.
No, I'm just kidding because I'm losing.
I know. All right, well,
Thought that
our
was
last
obvious.
question, just for funsies, is simply this. What does Jason Statham have to say about being a jewelry con man? Statement A. Human nature says that you want a bargain, whether you want the goods or not. Statement B. We never used to say it was gold-plated. We never used to say what it was. And statement C. Some of the guys I used to run with are still doing that shit.
David.
David.
C.
David, you have guessed this correctly. It is C.
Oh, hey, he didn't get shut out.
He did not get shut out.
Scoreboard
This is the
watchers
start
will
of the
think this was
comeback, folks.
a close game. I mean, it was a close game, but
Yeah,
All right.
honestly, this could have been a much different game if I got one of the questions where you got it wrong and then I just guessed
it was
the wrong
pretty.
one.
It was pretty brutal that we both got
Yeah.
wrong.
3 of them
wrong.
were you just both got it wrong. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, Jason
I swear you
Statham-
have a writer. You're using your dad or something.
No,
No.
no. Jason Statham.
your brother is
He
writing
probably
it.
reached out to him like, Jason, what would be a fake
Literally,
quote you
yeah.
would say?
Yeah.
Well, Ethan, I'm glad you
I guess I was just too smart for you today. For both.
do a lot of shark ones. That
Devin, you have earned your
What's up?
14th trophy. Who the hell knows what will happen?
I'm
next
going.
time.
Hey, I'm going for 20. I know it's
for
not
20.
possible. I'm going for 20.
I will say this: it is definitely possible.
An underdog. No one ever said an underdog can get to 20.
I haven't done the math in my head yet to see if David still has a chance, but we're gonna play it all out and see what happens. All right. So, wow.
It's all right.
14
I'm
to
going
3.
for number 1 draft pick next season.
That's
Draft
right,
a
that's
replacement.
right.
I'm
right.
losing on purpose. So
Tanking.
And I will say just the tiebreaker was about acting. His 3 statements were: it can be a little pretentious. I think the blokes who get really into their roles are true psychopaths, and I've never had a fucking acting lesson. No one's telling me how to act. And the lie was: I think the blokes who get really into their roles are true psychopaths. Yeah, he's never had acting lessons.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be in any dramas. He just wants to be punching people in movies. He used to be trying to get
That's what
into the
he's good
Olympics
at.
as a diver because he did diving competitions as a kid. He also did a
I
lot
knew
of.
that.
He also did it for Britain. He came in 3rd twice for the qualifiers, and they only take the top 2. So he just missed twice for Barcelona,
Hey,
and then
ain't
whatever
bad,
the one
though.
after that was. Then he was he sold fake jewelry on the street to people. It made a lot of money. And here's the thing, because earlier we talked about the racing, and Devin, either one of you said I feel like that's something he would have done. In this early interview, he said as much as he's ever done was go-karting with friends. But years later, when his probably career is safe and he's probably statute of limitations, he had later said that, yeah, he was the only one of his diving buddies who had money because he was selling the jewelry on the side, the fake jewelry. So they used to go and buy cars and race around London. And he said, I'm surprised none of us died. So clearly he did race. Did his illegal
he
street
really is
racing.
Fast and Furious
Yes,
out of
exactly.
probably most of the actors in those movies.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah,
and
probably.
Guy Ritchie saw him selling jewelry on the street, and he needed someone like that for a movie. He's like, I can't learn about this from textbooks. You got to teach me everything. And he threw him in a movie and made £5,000 from that movie.
He
That's
also
what
was in
started his acting
a really
career.
obscure music video and where he's wearing basically just a jockstrap. It's
He
pretty
used to
funny.
also be a model.
That's weird that you would know that.
I looked up his career
Interesting.
after I seeing the Meg 2 Into the
Megading?
Trench or whatever it was called.
Are you sure you didn't search Jason Statham jockstrap?
That's a weird thing to randomly look up.
I think it's a more than fair thing to randomly look
That's
up.
what I'm saying.
No, if I was gonna do that,
Anyway, welcome back to the end of an episode. Here on the Sonic Movie Show, we did all the shit we talked about. We watch better movies than the one we watched. We have more fun with other movies. We have better conversations than the ones that we've had. I've never won an argument, so I'd like to win the next one. We are on YouTube, so like, subscribe, click the bell, comment below just how bad you think that our arguments were.
Tell
and
everyone
how great this movie was.
You guys need to come out in force and explain to Ethan why his
Are you
opinions
trying to
are
tell our
wrong.
audience to come out of the closet? That's kind of rude. Our audience can stay safe exactly where they are.
As long as they side with me, yeah.
Sure. We're also on social media on various platforms like Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Sonic Movie Show. So please follow us. We will see you next time. The next movie review was that Bayonetta movie I mentioned. There are other movies, other episodes of this podcast. There's lots of streams going on. I think by the time this came out, David met his future family. Yeah. Goodbye. Oh, as we always say to end this episode, goodbye.
Keep up.
Meg.